thing is this, man. Like, I don't care how many Laverne and Shirley episodes you've seen. I don't care how many you sing. It's the freaking theme song every time, man. Tell me y'all hadn't cried on the Laverne and Shirley theme song. Don't even try it. Every single both of y'all have.
What are you talking about?
I don't know, man. I'm
Don't
so
act like
lost
that.
right
We're
now.
talking about that. Don't act like we're not going to end that discussion just because we went live. Don't act like y'all are lying,
I was
man.
like, what is this?
We had
going
just
on
had a deep dive while Gary was getting us ready. We had a Laverne and Shirley deep dive, guys. I'm gonna tell you, it got serious up in here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Play it.
Tell Rob you're going live. A switch flips. Rob either
off.
starts going into something really random, or he starts telling like a really deep story from history, and you're just like, yeah, okay.
Y'all lies.
Y'all lies.
The devil's a lie, guys.
I don't lie. I've never lied.
Scout's honor.
Look, you're already.
See, we already got front row and wrestling with the MMA here.
Already
Want to know
starting
about
rumors,
Laverne and Shirley?
Thank you, wrestling with the MMA. No, I'm not talking about like who cried over the episode, man, like the season finale. Yeah, but I'm talking about like the theme song. The theme song always got me. I always loved the
What's
Laverne
the
and Shirley
theme?
theme.
Sing it for us.
You can't call me out like that, man, right here.
Well, you can't call people out about a theme song and then not sing it. That's just science.
Oh, yeah, show me the algorithm.
You can't show people algorithms, okay? Algorithms are imaginary.
That's exactly. I was just testing you. They're concepts. But you can like diagram them.
No, I can't.
I do love how big your mic is, Will. Just so
Thank you.
prominent, just positioned.
Thank you.
Mine still looks small compared to yours. So weird.
That seems to be the theme.
Y'all said we was gonna keep.
What did you think I was talking about, Rob?
I said no cursing.
Yeah, I didn't curse.
You're right. You're absolutely right, man.
I didn't say we couldn't make sexual innuendo.
You know, front row, we did start late, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because I'm not like that. I'm not here to bury anybody. But the person's name rhymes with Schmary Schmorn.
Oh, boy.
This is going to be...
Oh, boy, Goofy.
I can already tell.
No, wait, that wasn't Goofy. I just went to Scooby. It's two different cartoon dogs.
Goofy snack.
So weird. There we go. That was my Goofy. Oh, we're already off the rails and we haven't even started yet. So this is good.
Can only get better.
We're like in the basement levels of hate right now, man.
There we go.
We're on the ground floor.
All right, let's go and get started. What's up, you beautiful people? This is Gary Horton. This is the NWA, the podcast celebrating the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time. Talking about the National Wrestling Alliance. And no, I am not drunk, despite what RJ says in the chat. I am perfectly sober, and I'm also here with @HeyIt'sWill.Daily. Hello, Will.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, just get right up on that mic. Make sure you do that.
Hello.
Also in the house is the Doctor of Style, the Doctor of Thugonomics, Dr. Rob Stinson.
Doc McLovin.
Doc McLovin. I was really trying to think of that one this time, and I could not remember what it is you always say. I was too caught up in my snack shack or
I apologize.
whatever.
I'm noticing like a green misty haze around me. That's just great kabuki mist. If you're wondering.
Yeah.
Do y'all see that, or is it just me?
Yeah.
I thought you had like kind of a green tint to you.
Yeah, that's kabuki mist.
Yeah, I thought you just had a match with Muta or something. You're just coming from that.
Yeah. Or you were crawling up the Big Show's nose or something. Just got some green. I don't know. I don't have anything good for that. So we'll move on. How's everybody doing today? It's good to see you all. It's Tuesday night. It's NWA day or NWA night. This is the NWA After Dark. And we're excited to be here. Today we're going to be discussing the 7 levels of hate starring Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana. I have a thing I meant to send out about that, as a matter of fact. I'm looking over here to the side. Yeah, I know. I just thought about it. I was like, I never even sent the thing.
Sorry, guys. Rob had me just so engaged in whatever crap he was talking about.
Kabuki missed.
Mark Griffith is in the house.
Laverne and Shirley.
Mark Lee. We got a bunch of people in the house. We thank you guys for showing up to hang out with us here. Jay Calvin may be joining us in a little bit because he's more of an expert on this time period than any of us. But until then, before we head down into all 7 levels of hate and hell or whatever, how you guys been? You have anything you want to talk about? Any news? Any rumors? Any results? Rey Mysterio lost his eyeball. Did you see that? That was the thing that happened in wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, Rob, we're losing Rob. Back to the NWA.
I know the big news, probably the biggest news of the last 3 weeks is that we're getting Carney and driver's licenses.
That's a good point. We did get an email today saying for Patreon that the driver's license probably going to happen. So at least that's not over. I see Wrestling with the MMA in the chat asking, is Carneyland over? I ask because if so, I'm putting my Carneyland shirt up and I'm not wearing it anymore. So should Wrestling with the MMA keep his Carneyland shirt out and continue to wear it?
Yes.
Even with or without driver's license?
You got to wear it, man.
It's been voted that you wear it.
Yeah, you got to wear it, man. Carneyland is, regardless of what happens going forward, Carneyland is it's an important reminder of this important and unusual time, a time like no other. And this was the efforts of the NWA and David Lagana to provide something for us. And it's regardless of what happens, man, I enjoyed it while it lasted. And if it goes on, I'm happy. If it doesn't, it was a great few weeks. So wear it. I'm going to wear mine.
I'm going to wear yours too, Rob.
I believe you.
At the same time. At the same time.
What?
See, I was going to make it weird. What size shirt do you have? Rob, what are you drinking? Is that just like straight whiskey that's in that big glass of yours?
I do like straight whiskey. I think that whiskey, I'm a Presbyterian, guys. That whiskey is one of the great. I can't. What? Ain't nobody being funny here.
I just can't follow.
I'm only laughing.
I can't follow your train of thought. You're just like, I like whiskey. Listen, I'm a Presbyterian. Like, what?
No, what you have to understand is that traditionally, in the Presbyterian tradition, whiskey holds a place of high esteem. It is respected. Scotch whiskey, American bourbon, American Tennessee whiskey is a venerated drink. We celebrate it. I mean, man, yeah, I love whiskey, and it's one of the great gifts that God gave us. But this is not whiskey. This, in fact, is it's known as a Robbie Roode, which is simply vodka and Red Bull.
I think that's called a vodka Red Bull.
Yeah, I call it a Robbie Roode.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
just saying, if you go to a bar and order it,
yeah, you just
probably not calling it. Or
my backup is this Syntax Imperial Peanut Butter Stout, which is absolutely delicious. And I wish that I had the power and the technology to force this across the screen to give it to Will, because Will is dry tonight.
Yeah, I wish you had that ability too. That'd be super interesting. We'd probably get more viewers if you could do magic. You are dressed a little like Chris Angel today, so it would be cool if you could do magical things.
I always get that, man.
Here, just hand it to me.
Yeah, like David Grohl, Chris Angel.
Wait, I don't know where. No, we're not on the screen. We're not on a gallery view. On my screen, you're right above me, so I was like, drop it.
See, on mine, you're at the top, Will. I'm in the middle of the totem pole. WWE Front Row, by the way, is an ordained Presbyterian deacon, also an atheist. So
checks out.
I'm going to tell you, some of the greatest debates ever that I've ever heard have been between the great Presbyterian apologist Greg Monson, student of Cornelius Van Til, and Gordon Stein, who I think was also formerly a Presbyterian turned atheist. There are some academic exchanges that can happen. I love WWE Front Row. I'd love to talk theology with them someday, not because I'm interested in proselytizing or converting, but I find a great deal of strength and reassurance from faith and all those kinds of things. And I see you about to try to want to giggle over there, but you look like you was wanting to giggle there, Gary. I'm talking to you, bro.
I'm not giggling. No, not
you
me.
About to.
Gary's about to. Gary doesn't giggle.
Ever.
Giggling Gary.
It was smirk. It was a smirk. Nah, anyway, yeah. WWE Front Row, let's get together, man. One of the things
I just like getting Rob revved up. You make me happy. Am I allowed to be happy, Rob?
No. Happiness. Presbyterians are descendants of the Puritans, and Puritans are very much against happiness. I'm just kidding. Of course not. Yeah. Be happy. Life is good, man. I want to talk theology with you one day, WWE Front Row, just to hang out, man. Not to convert anybody or disconvert anybody, just to share ideas. I want to do that with Josephus.
It's so weird. He was talking to me about wanting to confront Front Row or convert Front Row earlier, but that was like a different thing. It was not to do with religion. What were you? I can't remember now. But anyway, side note. Well, okay. Did you guys watch the Russians? Did you guys watch the Russians video that I sent you?
Yes.
I bet you.
I have not seen it.
Yeah.
Will, was that a no?
Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it yet.
You're going down. I know that phrase too.
Yeah. We'll post it from the. I meant to do it today. I was going to send it out through the our social media stuff, but I forgot. Anyway, it's basically Jeff Lewis Neal, Tyson Dean, who you saw on the Circle Squared. If you saw that episode, they basically, they had Nikita Koloff as their coach, Coach K, as he was going by. He has been training them, and they've been putting out a series of videos that are very cool. And we always appreciate go-getters like that. And it's interesting to see them just work towards something. And then their last video just dropped, and it is basically the final version of their turn to what they're going to be now. And I think they're hoping for a spot in the NWA, and we'd like to push for them to hopefully get that spot if that's on the table for them. But essentially, Jeff Lewis Neal is now known as they've earned their chains that they get to wear over their shoulders. And Jeff Lewis Neal is now known as Neil Koloff. And Tyson Dean is now Alexander Koloff. And Coach K is now going to be Uncle Nikita. So they're continuing the legacy of the Russians. He calls it the dynasty of that group. So very interesting stuff. So can't wait to see what those guys get out of that. So we want to get the word out there about them and get people to notice them. And hopefully maybe one day we'll see them on the TV screens again, maybe in an NWA ring where it feels like they would fit in pretty well, where they would belong because of that legacy. So anyway, we'll put it out on the social media stuff. Anything else you guys want to hit on before we talk about the great Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana feud of 2011, 12, 13, 12, 13? I don't know.
Well, I'll just say a little internal news here. We have gained a follower on Twitter since we started the show, and we are now at 5,004 followers on Twitter. We broke 5,000. That's exciting. And a lot of you guys who are watching right now have been following us for a long time and interacting with us and sharing stuff. So you guys have a part in that. So thank you all for helping increase the visibility of this show and hence increasing the visibility of the National Wrestling Alliance, because we're just trying to keep the conversation going. And so continue to interact with us and share our tweets and things like that from the podcast. Twitter channel at the NWA Pod. If you're not following us, I imagine most of the people here probably are. This is like our core group. But yeah, share out the link to the show. Let's get some more people in this chat. This is going to be a fun chat. I'm excited. This was a really cool topic. Something that I knew absolutely nothing about. As a newer NWA fan, obviously I didn't go back this far, 2012 yet. So this was a really fun exercise for me to go through this 7 levels of hate. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and to
Absolutely.
piggyback,
don't roll your eyes, Rob. People can't see it. I see you over there rolling your eyes. I stopped so that you could talk. I would not dare.
You gave me like a half second,
step
right?
on your toes.
No, I was just going to piggyback on what Will said and say, since April 18th or 12th or 18th, something like right around like right when the whole pandemic was starting to pick up momentum, we've gained almost 1,000 Twitter followers, and that is great because we feel like, we love the NWA, we love professional wrestling as a whole, but particularly the NWA, and we're just a bunch of guys hanging around, just hanging out in the evening, talking wrestling, being buddies. You guys, we feel very close to you guys. We feel like you're very much a part of this, and that's what that whole hashtag NWA fam is. We want you guys to tweet that out every time you tweet something because we feel solidarity with you guys and just feel like a unit. And I think that this is one of the reasons, really, honestly, between me and I don't have the inside scoop, but I think when all the drama was going down here in the last month, I think this is one of the things that really has caused our president to regain heart and regain enthusiasm. The fact that he sees, hey, we have a family. This is not just, they're not just fans, man. They're a family. They have some unity in this. They find common purpose in this, and this is very important. And it's unlike anything else you ever see in wrestling. I mean, you don't see any other community like ours that is so fervent, so closely connected, so loyal to each other and to the cause. And so we appreciate everybody who watches this, who supports us, who stays up late hours to hear us just gab and joke with you guys and joke with each other and just enjoy the great sport of professional wrestling, the greatest sport in the world. So I appreciate that. And we're going to have a good time tonight.
And I'll just add this as kind of a charge to everyone in the NWA fam. Like this video if you haven't already, this stream, subscribe if you haven't already, and help us get the word out. I mean, we do all we can to promote the show and to get the word out about this is the NWA podcast. I mean, I am walking proof that you talk about converting people, Rob. I'm living proof that this podcast converts wrestling fans to National Wrestling Alliance fans, because I was out there wavering around in WWE land and, thinking that was all there was and the best there was. And boy, was I wrong. And this podcast and Gary and everything he's done to build it up played a big part in me being here. So look at him. He's crying now because I said something nice about him. But
that's very sweet.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys, I work in marketing, and I can tell you word of mouth marketing is the most effective form of marketing out there. So as much as you guys can get the word out about this channel, these live streams, the website, all that kind of stuff, get it out there. It just increases our visibility and just enhances the NWA because, there's us and JCal, and we're just trying to keep the conversation going. That's where our heart's at right now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And thanks for those kind words, Will. And let's do a little, also while we're here, just doing this. We got breaking news. We did just get a message right this very second. Actually, it was a few seconds ago, but I had to wait. It is from Maureen in your emails if you're a town council member of Carneyland. And it says the following. Hello, town council members. I have another update, 2 in one day. If you missed the first one, it was about Carneyland driver's license that we mentioned. This Thursday, 7/23, at 9 p.m. Eastern time, we will be having a town hall meeting with William Patrick Corgan, Nick Aldis, and Joe Galley. The town hall is open to any town council member that can attend. If you are unable to attend, I will be making the meeting available to view the following day. The town hall meeting will be conducted via Zoom. If the email you use for Patreon is not the email you use for Zoom, please send me a message so I can resend the correct email. I will be the host of the meeting, but will not be participating. Any questions, please let me know. Thanks, Maureen.
Ooh, that's good.
That feels like big news. That feels
like
good. We just got a statement from Billy Corgan via Instagram and social media last week. And then now the man is about to appear via Zoom with the champ, Nick Aldis and Joe Galley. And we're going to get an update live on Zoom. That's cool. If you're a town council member, that's exciting stuff. I'm pretty pumped.
This is happening.
The NWA is alive and well, my friends. We're going to have something new to talk about after today with the NWA. That's fun. Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern.
We got freaking.
Where are you going to be, Rob?
Is that when your Pilates is?
Eddie Kingston is going to be on Piper's Notes Thursday night. Right at that time.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome. Well,
so you have to take notes, man. Take notes for me. You and WWE Front Row need to take notes for me. Is Wrestling with the MMA? Are you a town council?
Hey, can I be your proxy? Can I be your proxy? You just give me your Zoom login.
Well, let's talk about that offline.
I'll put a bandana on my head. They'll never know.
Yeah.
You can do it. You can pass for him. I bet you could.
I had a bandana around here.
I'm gonna echo WWE Front Row sentiment that Thunder Rosa should be there, but yeah.
Hey, Mr. Kingston, excuse me, sir. Would it be too much trouble to? I'm not going to be that guy.
Don't you dare.
Yeah, we'll talk offline there, Will.
Rob's so disappointed. Like, he was excited. This should be good news, and Rob's like all depressed now.
I'll hang out with Kingston then. I'll do whatever you don't want to do.
I was about to say that is first world problems. Like, God, I was going to talk to Eddie. Now I got to talk to Eddie Kingston.
And there's Zoom chat with Billy Corgan or Eddie Kingston. Oh, it's tough. Tough life.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna have to have my guys rep because I can't. I've been looking forward to this Eddie Kingston dialogue for some time, and that's what's going to happen with me on Thursday. So.
Well, we're excited about that too.
That's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna edit it that night. It's gonna be ready for Friday morning. That will come out Friday.
Can't wait. I'm gonna watch it first thing in the morning.
I originally scheduled Dawn of Wrestling to be Friday, and no shade on her at all. I just feel like Eddie Kingston's is so timely right now. You know, with what the chatter going on back and forth between he and Nick Aldis. I want to get that out quick, and then I might put Dawn out a couple days after that, and not wait till Friday. Because we had a great time with her too, and she is one of the bright lights in the NWA fam. So I don't want to throw any shade on her at all.
Makes sense. Oh, Dr. Red Tyler in the house. Everybody, thanks for joining us in the chat. If you're here right now live, lots to be excited about. A lot of news going on. We're talking about it here right now, and then there's going to be more afterwards. Our main event topic for today is the seven levels of hate. I don't know why I went like real red. We're going to be talking 7 levels of hate. Adam Pearce versus Colt Cabana, the feud. This is technically our second or third The Feud series. I mean, if you count Sting and Ric Flair, which I kind of did. So we're going to get into that in just a second. Just keep in mind that, afterwards we'll spend time with the chat room. So if it feels like I'm ignoring you, or if any of us are ignoring you during the normal speed of this thing, it's just that we're also trying to have the discussion and keep this thing going for the podcast listeners that'll be checking this out later. And if you're in the podcast, just keep in mind that after the podcast portion is over, we hang out with the chat room and talk to them about whatever they want. So you're missing out on that if you don't come and join us live. So if you're here, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe. And if you're on the podcast, make sure you give us 5 stars. helps us get in front of more people. We appreciate all of you, and especially all of you on Twitter that it just took us past 5K. That's awesome. All right, so if you guys are ready, we could jump right into the feud.
Yes, we do need to get.
I want to say, man, just on the outset. Oh, go ahead, Will. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say we do need to get like little theme songs for all these.
Yeah,
I feel like I know. Dave Scooby's in the chat. He's thrown together some audio things. He needs to make us one for the feud. What's the other one? Rewind. So we can have little.
He made us a great one the other day.
Yeah, he did. It was
sent
really
me
good.
And Scooby, I try to give him credit where I can, and once we get this thing flowing a little bit better, maybe with some OBS or something, we'll have the better setup to like play those theme songs and stuff like that. Like our boy J Cal's like on it, man. Like that guy's getting good at that stuff. My biggest issue with it right now is just switching between people. But we'll figure it out. We'll get better at this as we go along. We are as God made us. And so
indeed.
It's good.
Indeed.
Love us or leave us.
That's good.
Indeed.
You're a good
Scooby's
Presbyterian.
the man, and I love that. I want to echo that, man. Scooby does he does the Lord's work, as it were. He's fantastic. I wanted to say, just kind of as a preface, that for those of you in the chat or those watching who have watched an episode of Piper's Notes and watched maybe 2 or 3 of them, perhaps you'll find that the themes that we echo in that particular project are similar, and that's because in my household, and Will and Gary share this philosophy, we feel like wrestling is not a marginal performance sport. We feel like it is in the mainstream of performance sports and arts, just like any other form, whether it be Broadway, rock and roll, other forms of athletics. This is high culture, and there's no better way to illustrate that than with the 7 levels of hate, because when you get the 7 levels of hate, you're getting a classic excursion into Greek mythology. You're getting Ben-Hur. You're getting a fantastic tale, a tale that's really steeped in and rooted in 2 guys who had similar upbringings, were from similar communities, who knew each other in high school, who competed each other perennially for years, and then emerged over the course of a couple years as just natural opponents. And this feud that broke out in about the year 2011, 2012 was something that a screenwriter could not write better. And it's because it's real. I mean, these guys really did grow up in the same, communities in Chicago. They really did compete against each other. They really did have a lot of personal competitive edge. They did go to the same wrestling school. They did train together more or less. They did have similar backgrounds, and they were natural rivals. And so anytime they met in the ring, they really did pull that competitiveness, and there really was real intensity between the 2 of them, wanting to bring out the best and really challenge each other to be the best in the world, which is what the world's championship represents. And so if you want to talk about pro wrestling being up there with any other form of performance sport or art, the 7 levels of hate is the best illustration I can think of. It is fantastic storytelling.
Absolutely.
And as somebody with, as I said earlier, no context for this really, and I didn't know any of the history. Watching this, I was just, the whole time I was like, how did I not know this? This is one of the greatest wrestling stories ever told, the greatest feuds, the greatest, you know me, I'm big on storytelling, and that's what wrestling is. As ultimately it's storytelling, and the story told by what we're about to get into is second to none. And yeah, we'll get into it, but you guys will see. And if you haven't watched the documentary, we posted some links to it. It's over on Adam Pearce's YouTube channel. It's like 2 hours or so. Well worth it. It could have been another 2 hours and I still would have been engaged. It's just a great story.
Absolutely. So as these guys were just talking about today, we're going to be delving into another installment of a series we call The Feud. As you know, the feud takes some time to delve into one of the great rivalries in wrestling's past, and it walks you through who was involved, how it began, what happened, and the impact it had on the business. Now, obviously, the NWA is famous for spectacular feuds, many of which are considered legendary in the world of wrestling. Not unlike last time when we discussed the epic Ric Flair versus Sting feud leading up to their Great American Bash match at 1990. That rivalry is probably one of the most well-known in history, as it came like right when wrestling was hitting its peak in terms of like visibility and popularity. Today's feud is a little bit different in that it comes during a period of time when the NWA was a little less known. In fact, this period of time we've often seen now referred to as the wilderness years, although some find that term disrespectful. And maybe Stinson has some history here. I was even trying to look up like why is it called the wilderness years, and all I can figure is that it's just lost time considered, or it was less visible for most.
J. Cal thinks that I coined the term, and I told him I was like I didn't coin it. I think that
speak of the devil.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah, speak of the devil himself. Well, look at those.
Look at that.
I was telling J. Cal, I was like, I didn't, and this was in the chat. I was like, I think that I want to say that I heard Dave Marquez use this, referring to that time when Tharp was was more or less calling
Marquez
the shot.
was on the show and he had no idea what we were talking about when we said the wilderness years.
Well, he may not. He may have just said it.
Just own it, Rob.
I mean,
So
I'd love
maybe-
to own it. I mean, because it's in so much use now. I'd love to be like, I'm the man who coined it, but I know I heard it, and I'm pretty sure I heard Marquez say it. And it might have not have been deliberate, and it may have not have been, a thing that was, it may have just been a stream of conscience type thing. But I'm pretty sure I heard him say that with regard to Tharp. So, and so this would have been even later than this era, slightly later. But we have generally used the term to refer to that period of time when the NWA didn't have major television deals and was more or less out there doing the independent circuit and didn't have the notoriety. But I don't look at that term at this period as anything like you were saying, Gary. It's not a slight. I mean, I think this is one of the most vibrant periods in the NWA history. Adam Pearce.
I just said some people could take it disrespectfully, but the reason I say that is because I think a lot of people were working very hard during that time, and they were making a lot of effort. So, folks, we want to take a second, by the way, to welcome to the show right now, right as we're getting started, jumping into this very topic today on our episode of The Feud, Mr. Jason Cayley, J-Cal, as we like to call him, from the Alliance blog. If you guys haven't checked that out, you got to. Welcome to J-Cal.
Hey, fellas. I think somebody hit that Alliance logo up in the sky, and that's why I jumped on, because I knew that you guys wanted to speak to somebody who lived that era, who was a part of that era. Hell, I was in 5 seconds of the documentary, so I had that going for me.
That was my favorite part.
Your wife took many of the photos in the documentary.
Yeah, she did, and it's funny. So, do I have a second to tell an Adam story, an Adam Pearce story?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, actually, J-Cal, if you have a second, let me get there real quick.
Yeah,
because I want to get to what we're talking about. I was doing the little lead to the thing. Basically, I got to the point saying this, we were talking about Sting and Ric Flair, and that was our last feud that we discussed, kind of. We've also talked about Aldis and Cody, but like today's a little different in that it comes to this period of time we call the wilderness years. But anyway, at the end of the day, I think the main reason this time period is known as such is because it's a period where the popularity of the NWA was at a different level than the heights it had been used to at one point. And with the rise of other major wrestling promotions, easy access to multiple options via cable, and let's face it, other major factors, sad but true, the NWA Championship wasn't as highly regarded as it once was. Now, let me establish when I say that, by the way, that's not a universal opinion. In a lot of minds and hearts, and most certainly right here on this show, the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship always has and will be the most prestigious wrestling championship of all time. And even though the visibility may not have been what it once was, there were tons of men and women working their asses off to try to make it reach the former glory People like our friend of the show, David Marquez, bloggers documenting the story. I even put that in my notes to make sure to mention J. Cal right here, who's on the show. I was like, J. Cal was capturing the moment right when they were happening. He was there. He was watching. He was paying attention. And in the ring, that was the case as well. The people competing for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship still considered it a top prize in the industry and a part of history. In fact, during this time, the men that fought over this title would do anything to obtain it, much less what they would do to keep it. And that's why today we're talking about a feud that, despite being a little less known than Flair, Stinger, Cody, Aldis, is one that I submit is absolutely one of the great feuds in NWA history. Today, we're talking about Scrap Iron, Adam Pearce versus Colt Boom Boom Cabana and the 7 levels of hate. J. Cal, please let us have. I just wanted to give it that proper introduction to say exactly who and what we're talking about here. But you tell us your Adam Pearce story.
Okay, so you guys, I've been at this for many, many years. It's not hyperbole. I've been doing it since about 2007, right? I was following the NWA as a blogger, and this was probably even before you could classify me as a blogger. I was writing about the National Wrestling Alliance for a little-known website called SoCal Uncensored. SoCal Uncensored been around since 2000, so it's really 20 years, and it's been one of those sites that's been at times very divisive, but at other times very, very important to the history of independent wrestling, especially in Southern California. So David Marquez is promoting wrestling through the Inoki Dojo. I'm watching his shows. I'm getting acclimated with his audience. I've been watching Adam Pearce throughout the years. He's wrestling at Millennium Pro Wrestling. His first match in Southern California was against Brian Kendrick. Back then we called him Spanky. And he was really making his ways throughout Southern California. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Adam Pearce had this great feud with Frankie Kazarian over that Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Heavyweight Championship. Adam Pearce was wrestling for Ultimate Pro Wrestling, which was kind of like a lower WWE development. And I mean, that's the place that found guys like John Cena, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, again, Frankie Kazarian, and it was kind of like a breeding ground for future WWE talent. And so Adam Pearce was their champion. I mean, he was really kind of building up in Southern California. So around 2006, when the NWA is starting to do arena shows, they're starting to become, especially with David Marquez doing these bigger events. I started talking to Adam, not face to face. Back then everything was through, maybe back even then MySpace. And so we started messaging, started developing a rapport. And this schlub who had this awful podcast and this very hardly known website reached out to him and said, "Hey man, I really dig what you're doing. You've got this title, you're touring the country. Let's celebrate it. Let's talk about it." And so he agreed to come on my podcast. And at the time, he was the biggest get I ever got. He was very transparent, very cool to work with. And so we had this great conversation. Now, keep in mind, we've never met face to face yet. That's cool. I mean, that's how it is for most people. So in the summer of, I guess it was like 2008, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, then still going by NWA Pro Wrestling, put on a series of shows. It was basically a tour, and they were using that footage to eventually do the pitch for what would become Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And they did a show in Oceanside, California, which this just happens to be the cover of that show. Then they did a show in Yuma, Arizona at the Desert, I think it was Desert Springs or Desert something or other, a little minor league baseball field in the middle of summer when it got to be like 115 during the middle of the day. And so Michelle and I, my wife, we went on this road trip to go to each show. So they did one in Oceanside, they did one in Yuma, and then they were going to do one in San Bernardino. So basically San Diego, California, Yuma, Arizona, and then back in San Bernardino, California, which is not far from where I live. So we did this road trip with them. We didn't like stay with them, but we just kind of hung out in the same city. Well, during the middle of the show where Adam Pearce, he was wrestling Sean Waltman, Pearce wins the title. Everything's cool, right? We're like, wow, this is amazing. My wife gets bored. She hands me the camera. She goes, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm like, okay. And I'm watching Blue Demon wrestle his match. And she walks over and she sees Adam Pearce, who's just kind of changed. He just had his match. He's just kind of hanging out. And she goes, hi, Adam, because my wife is very much an extrovert. I'm very much an introvert. So we kind of a yin and yang type deal. And she goes, hi, Adam. And that time she was my girlfriend. I'm J Cal's girlfriend. And Adam jumps up. J Cal? J Cal's here? Send him over. And we had never met at this point, right? So I walk over to him, and I'm very introverted until you get to know me, until I get to know you, I guess. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I'm playing it very low key. I'm not the guy that usually gets photos with the wrestlers or asks for autographs or anything like that. I respect your space, you respect mine, but my wife is the opposite. So we're hanging out talking to Willie Mack and Adam Pearce, and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing after the show? And I'm like, well, we're going to go back to our hotel. And he goes, we're going to go to Applebee's. You want to meet us there? I was like, well, hell yeah, I want to hang out with Adam Pearce at Applebee's. So we roll, and I was familiar with David Marquez, and I did have a relationship with David Marquez at that point. I was supposed to go hang out with David Marquez and pretty much the rest of the crew from NWA Hollywood, NWA Pro Wrestling, whatever you want to call them. But I ditched those guys to go hang out with Adam Pearce at the Applebee's. And I think I made the right decision.
I think he probably did too. Considering you've still got a relationship with David Marquez.
They got that Bourbon Street steak, boy. They got that Bourbon Street steak at Applebee's too, man.
Brother, I was just drinking beer and eating French fries. That was it.
Oh man! So this is what's good about having J Cal here for this part of it is that I've got like a linear set of ideas of where this discussion goes, but I'm obviously tackling this as an independent outside researcher, just trying to go in and piece together what I can. And so it's going to be cool. Is I'm sure that there are places just like if we were talking about Flair and Sting and had JR on the podcast, he would have been able to tell us some things we weren't thinking of at the time. So. J Cal, if I say anything that just sounds completely off, feel free to
wait.
Let me know.
Did you just liken me to Jim Ross? Knock that shit off, man. I ain't that guy. I ain't that guy.
I just compared you to Jim Ross. Oh man. So we always like to establish, by the way, up front, that was a cool story about Adam Pearce from J Cal there. I'm sure there's more that J Cal can let us in on, but we always establish up front on these two that the Feud series is not like a deep dive into individual careers. That's another segment we hope to get to someday. That said, it would be an injustice not to contextually not to dive into the history of these two men just a little bit. So if there might be some skipping around, but in our previous feuds, it's been kind of fun to discuss how two wrestlers featured had paths that were completely different, or analyze and discover how they might mirror or parallel each other in some ways, like we did with Aldis and Cody. But special analysis isn't really necessary here because, like Rob said at the top of the show, the journey with the seven levels of hate begins with Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana, and essentially them being in the exact same place right from the beginning. And that place would be the North Shore of Chicago. Pearce is playing high school football at Waukegan, I think he said, and Colt's at Deerfield. Their high school football teams literally play each other every single year, and that's how far back they go. So these guys know each other from the get. Adam Pearce, I think, would actually start training and wrestling his first match, graduating from high school. But somewhere along the way, he ended up falling in with Steel Dominion, run by Ace Steel and Danny Dominion. And it was here that Pearce would hone his craft and eventually assist with training as well. which would become especially notable because a little while later, he was going to be joined by some fresh new babyface students in the form of Colt Cabana and guys like CM Punk. Right. Rob, I see you've got something
I wonder when Colt Cabana joins this school about 4 or 5 years later, he already has a certain opinion fixed in his head about Adam Pearce, because Adam Pearce is from Waukegan, which is a little bit beneath the social status of Deerfield. Deerfield is much more affluent. Colt Cabana makes no bones about the fact that he lived more of a privileged upbringing, and that they looked at the Waukegan people as much more industrial and hard scrapple, as it were. Not that he was trying to be insulting, but they always looked down like, these are the industry boys, and we're the kids that have the opportunities and stuff. And so I wonder, they played now Adam Pearce, I don't know if you remember in the documentary, Adam Pearce makes a point to say, yeah, we whooped them every time we played them. So that has to be in their minds when they confront each other at Steel Dominion, you know what I mean? Where we've got this community rivalry. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm an athletic director. That's what I do for my job. I'm a high school administrator and athletic director. And we have a couple of big rivals, but our big rivals right down the road at Heritage High School. And we look at them as they're the prissy, very privileged, affluent kids, and they don't know what it's like to live and walk the tough life. Our boys are tough. They've lived a tough life. And so I feel like that's what Adam Pearce's mentality must have been, as this prissy boy from Deerfield comes into his school and wants to make a name, and later wants to make a name at the expense of Adam Pearce. So that's just a little psychology.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to think of it that way. Now, I mean, from everything I saw, though, too, they eventually became very good friends. So despite whatever the first impressions were, I think even during that time in Steel Dominion, Colt, Pearce, and CM Punk were actually like pretty tight as a faction, even like wrestling sometimes, and just like buddy. So they eventually learned to at least respect each other pretty heavily, it seems like. Now, without hanging out too much in that area, unless you guys have something, I was going to say that, I mean, a lot of them did, they broke in like really wrestling in like the Milwaukee region. And eventually as things go, they would have to part ways, like as they all pursued their career a little bit further. I think Colt actually even went on to college to like play football there for a little while. And, but both men ended up still pursuing wrestling interests. And long story short, they'd cross paths again when they both ended up in Ring of Honor during its beginning glory days back in like 05, 06, right around there. Now, J.K., you could probably help me with this name. I think during around this time, specifically about May 13th, 2007, NWA Executive Director Bob Trobich. That's how you said. All right. This was around the time the NWA started severing ties with TNA. So for those of you who knew about the NWA TNA stuff, this was when they decided to cut ties with them. I think David Marquez was a part of that at that time as well. Mm-hmm. And so that left the NWA World Heavyweight Championship and the NWA World Tag Team Championship, all of that vacant. Shortly after this, they decided to hold the Reclaiming the Glory tournament. This was kind of fun because I actually got to ask J. Kyle a little bit in the pre-party for his show today about Brent Albright, who was in this tournament. And it was because I was researching this part and his name came up, and I saw him pop up a lot, so I was curious about this guy. But anyway, they announced the Reclaiming the Glory tournament to crown a new NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. So they chose 16 men to compete in the tournament, with matches taking place throughout the National Wrestling Alliance members and affiliates, as well as selected matches in non-affiliated groups like Shikara, New England Championship Wrestling, IWA Puerto Rico. It was kind of cool, though. I was looking at the setup of this thing, and they had like the Luthez bracket, the Terry Funk bracket, the Jack Briscoe bracket, Harley Race bracket. I thought that was pretty sick. So here are the names that got thrown in there just in the first round. Glamour Boy Shane versus Fred Sampson. Now, Fred Sampson, you know better now, is Darren Young, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then Brent Albright versus Osamu Nishimura. And
can I bring up a point about Osamu Nishimura?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he was one of the few guys that was part of the tournament to crown the world champion after Shane Douglas threw the belt down. So he actually had some history and tradition with the NWA, which is really cool that was someone they wanted in that tournament because he was connected to the last big tournament to crown a world's heavyweight champion.
No, I love that. That's exactly what I'm looking for here, because I bring it all this up because I love these little interconnections that all of these things have. In the Terry Funk bracket, you had Pepper Parks versus Claudio Castagnoli, who people would know better as Cesaro, and Psicodelico Jr. versus Roughneck Ryan. And then in the Jack Briscoe bracket, you had Bryan Danielson, who we all know as Daniel Bryan, versus Nelson Creed, Mikey Nichols and Fergal Devitt, who is known as Finn Balor nowadays. You had Damian Wayne and Chad Parham, and Adam Pearce and Aaron Aguilera. So those were your members of the tournament here. So it would go on to.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I feel like
that's what. Feel free.
Pepper Parks also is Brandon Braxton Sutter. I believe he wrestles in AEW. You guys could correct me. Braxton Sutter,
nice.
Anyone?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. And I'm let's see. I'll type him in right here.
I'm looking it up right now.
At us. Oh no, he's in the Forgotten Sons. Is that? Or no, he's the Blade. He's the Blade. That's it.
Yeah, and the Butcher and the Blade. There you go.
The Butcher and the Blade.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay. All right. Well, it ended up Adam Pearce advanced, Chad Parham advanced, Finn Balor advanced to face Daniel Bryan, which is interesting, just looking back now. Claudio and Psicodelico, Fred Sampson, Brent Albright. Just to skip ahead in the tournament a little bit, it ended up Bryan Danielson faced off against Adam Pearce, and Brent Albright was up against Claudio Castagnoli. So Brent Albright ends up beating Cesaro, essentially, and Daniel Bryan ends up beating Adam Pearce in the tournament. So your main event for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship should be Daniel Bryan and Brent Albright, but a week prior to the finals of the tournament, Bryan Danielson suffered a fractured orbital bone in a match with a Japanese fighter named Takeshi Morishima. And so here's something that I'm sorry to again interrupt, but Morishima don't apologize anymore.
I'll try not to. Morishima was your Ring of Honor World Champion, and prior to this tournament that kicked off, Daniel Bryan was somewhat collecting. I say Daniel Bryan, I hate that. Bryan Danielson was collecting championships around the world, and he was the World Series of Wrestling heavyweight champion, and it felt like he was going for the trifecta. If you were a fan at that time, you knew, okay, well, this Australian title, that's not super meaningful, but that's a heavyweight championship. And then he's going for the Ring of Honor championship. And then a week from that, then he's got the NWA finals. I mean, he could be a triple crown before you know it. And honestly, that was having a message board in that era, which still exists today. That's what we were talking about. We thought Bryan Danielson was going to come into after the Reclaiming the Glory, holding 3 titles, the 10 pounds of gold, the Ring of Honor championship, and the World Series of Wrestling championship. So didn't happen like that because Morishima just kind of, happened to pop Daniel Bryan in a right spot. It broke his orbital bone. People thought he was going to lose his eye, and the diagnosis initially was much, much worse than what the prognosis ended up being.
Nice. That's interesting information. So, yeah, and it would be really cool to think back, like, what if Bryan Danielson had won the 10 pounds of gold there? But Like Jake House said, unfortunately, that's not what happened. As a result, Adam Pearce was reinserted into the tournament to take Danielson's place in the finals. Danielson, wearing a protective eye patch, did have a hand in the match. He came in. He was a special enforcer during the finals to prevent interference from Adam Pearce's manager at the time. C. Edward Vanderpyle was the name I got. And actually, when the referee ended up getting knocked unconscious during the match, Danielson did take over and counted the pinfall. But at the end of the day, Adam Pearce defeated Brent Albright. This was in Bayamon, Puerto Rico on September 1st to win the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship for the first time. Now, despite the controversial victory, Pearce would go on to a lengthy and successful 11-month reign as a champion before he finally did end up losing it to Brent Albright on August 2nd, 2008 in New York City. And in the years, let's see, I'm trying to go through my timeline here. I was trying to give an update on like kind of where Pearce was during this time. I
could give you some insight.
Yeah, he brought, okay, go ahead.
So, I mean, at this point, first of all, nobody thought Pearce was walking out of Bayamon, Puerto Rico as champion. Again, because Danielson was the chosen one and Brent Albright was the runner-up, of course they thought Pearce was basically a lame duck. And when he won, it was like, oh, damn, he's not going to hold that title for very long. And, of course, everywhere he went his first year, people thought, oh, he's going to drop the title. So when he went to Virginia to wrestle Damian Wayne, you got to remember back then, Adam Pearce wasn't the name he is today. So when he went to Virginia to wrestle Damian Wayne, people thought, oh, well, now it's Damian Wayne's turn. He's going to get that belt. Or when he would go to West Virginia, and I know it sounds crazy, but former WCW mid-card wrestler, the Maestro, who was booking that area at the time. I mean, Pearce would go to West Virginia, and you're like, oh, damn, the Stroh's going to get the belt. That was one of the really cool things about that era is we didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, we all had predictions. We all kind of thought what was going to happen. But Pearce was like a rogue. He wasn't supposed to be the world's heavyweight champion. This was supposed to be Bryan Danielson's time. So when Pearce was based out of San Diego, California, and there's actually only one wrestling promotion in San Diego. And a misnomer from a lot of NWA fans was, oh, well, Pearce will just defend the title in California. His first year as champion, he had more defenses out of California than inside of California. So from the very get-go, Pearce was proving people wrong. And right around that time is when the eyes of Ring of Honor kind of fell upon Pearce. They were scouting him, and not just as a wrestler, but working in creative as well. He was booking a promotion in Southern California called AWS, and it was a very popular wrestling promotion. It was getting a lot of acclaim, and based on kind of the storylines and the creativity that was happening there, along with his wrestling all across the U.S., it was time that Ring of Honor wanted to be in business with Adam Pearce. So when Brent Albright won the title, Adam was already a regular member on the Ring of Honor roster. And where they had that match was the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. And even the owner of Ring of Honor said that was the match of the year that year for Ring of Honor. And the booker at the time, Gabe Spolowski, who is Evolve and all those did Evolve, and I think he's now working for the WWE. He didn't want that match on the card. And Kerry Silken kind of pushed it and said, hey, we want to do this for Dave Marquez and the NWA, for Adam Pearce, for Colt Cabana, for Brent Albright. We want to do this on this show. So it wasn't the main event, but you would think if you watched that match and the end of the match and the reaction of the crowd, you would think it was the main event.
It's pretty interesting stuff. Like I think it gets looked over a lot, or I wasn't aware of it. So, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, I read a lot about how Pearce would show up carrying something around in a briefcase. And then in 2008, he was on the show and he revealed it was the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. He had the 10 pounds of gold there. And it was the first time Ring of Honor recognized him as the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And he actually ended up facing the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Champion, Nigel McGuinness.
Yep.
And they actually, that was June 27th, 2008, they fought, and he ended up winning. Pearce defeated Nigel by disqualification in that match. So the NWA champion beat the Ring of Honor champion by disqualification. It was basically McGuinness had pinned Pearce to win the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, but the decision got reversed because it was an NWA match as well, and Nigel had thrown Pearce over the top rope, and technically that was a disqualification. So Pearce ended up getting the win, and I thought that was just kind of interesting stuff. But yeah, he was still at this time feuding with Albright, and so I got really interested in Albright. I was asking Jay Cal about him earlier because they ended up going on, and Britt Albright ends up on August 2nd, 2008, defeating Pearce via submission to win the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. And this was right after, by the way, somebody like Rob would probably appreciate, the NWA officials actually came out and presented Pearce with a new NWA championship with the red leather. And it was repeating history, like when Jack Briscoe defeated Harley Race for the NWA title, and Race got presented the thing by Sam Muchnick in 1973. So anyway, those two feuded for like another year.
And the cool thing about that too is Brent Albright was a wrestler based from Oklahoma, much like Briscoe. And not only that, but recently somebody was glorifying the red title, the red backed 10 pounds of gold on Twitter, and Pearce said that was a shit belt. And the guy was like, how could you say that? And Dave Marquez says, look, I paid for it. I know it was shit. And oddly enough, that belt disappeared after it was retired. So,
and on the that History and Tradition production that you appear on, JK, I think someone referred to that as the Mickey Mouse belt or something like that.
Yeah,
like, big nasty red. It just looks weird.
The rumor is it was a belt made from Pakistan, and if you're a belt collector, you know that those are usually very poorly produced, very
Rob was literally just telling us about his belt guy in Pakistan.
Sorry, Rob.
Nah, man, I got a guy that's from Pakistan.
Pull back the curtain.
A Luther Orville Brown belt.
Well, not your guy, Rob. Obviously, you vetted your source. He's an excellent belt maker.
I don't own the sweatshop, dude. I don't own the sweatshop. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty positive my 10 pounds of gold is from Pakistan, though. So for what that's worth.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the same one I have there.
Mine was made in China.
China, yeah.
Okay.
That's mine.
Have you defended that one yet, Jaco?
I believe the 5th.
Bring it on. I'm challenging you right now.
In Atlanta.
I think it's cool, man, that through all this, with Adam Pearce kind of being an accidental champion almost, that as it happens, he becomes like the last great NWA World Champion, truly great World NWA Champion before Nick Aldis came.
And the thing about that too is, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to take over the show, but
no, because that's definitely something I want to hit on, especially as we get into his feud with Colt Cabana, because I've never felt more connected to the Adam Pearce reign there. Just what the guy did. Like I just respect that guy a lot.
I think even if you ask Pearce, I don't think he really got into his run as world champion until about run number 3. And that's when things really got to like that triple, third, fourth level where it was just different. And I don't think his first run, he would even admit to this, it wasn't the best. And I really think that the NWA was just saying, what can we do? How can we make this work? And I think the long-term plan, if Danielson would have stayed had he not signed with the WWE, is that he was going to be world champion. If he never got injured, he was going to be world champion until WWE called. And then once that time came, Albright and Pearce would be groomed to be the replacement. The NWA didn't have the opportunity to groom anybody because even though Brent Albright was a former WWF wrestler, he used to be Gunner Scott. Before things got really big, he was fired and he working with Ring of Honor trying to get back into the swing of things. So when you got Albright and Pearce, kind of vying for that number 1, number 2 spot after Danielson, but that didn't happen. Danielson was gone, so they just went with Pearce, and I think they said, okay, let's see what the kid can do the first year, and I don't think he disappointed anybody.
No, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like in the modern era, it's like Tim Storm. When Tim Storm took the belt from Jack Stane, no one really quite knew what this meant, but he just prospered. He really thrived and had a great run there. And then what you were saying about Pearce not really feeling it until about the third reign. I mean, I think all of us would say with that first Nick Aldis reign, it was a good run. It was a good run. It was somewhat lengthy in terms of modern day title reigns, but it wasn't until the second really lengthy historic reign that started to see, oh, this is very important. We're living through important times right now. So yeah, I get what you're saying there on that Adam Pearce number 3 reign.
Yeah, the thing, you're saying all this, but looking back on this now, I get what you're saying about like just the way it might have been perceived at the time, but like imagining the NWA Championship, like loving it like I do now, especially just back in Ring of Honor, especially during this time when like that Ring of Honor roster was like a who's who. Like it is ridiculous. Like, when you're talking about guys, like I think this was during the time of like when I was looking, it was like Samoa Joe and CM Punk were there, and Nigel McGuinness we mentioned earlier, and just like Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and
Austin Aries, Davey Richards.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I was asking about Brett Albright, because I was like, who the hell is this guy? Why have I not even heard of this guy?
And the thing is, you probably saw him on SmackDown. I mean, he was a product. He came out of the wrestling school in Hayward, California, which was responsible for a lot of guys kind of trained by Donovan Morgan. And have you guys seen the Beyond the Mat documentary where they talk about the wrestling promotion in Northern California? A lot of those guys were responsible for doing these trainings. And Brent Albright was supposed to be a part of APW, but his group broke off, and right around that time he started getting dates working with Pro Wrestling Noah. So his experience, I mean, he goes from working in this indie promotion in Northern California to working with Pro Wrestling Noah to getting signed to the WWE, and then like that everything's gone, and now he's wrestling for Ring of Honor. And the storyline with, and I know this is supposed to be about 7 Levels of Hate, but the storyline with Brent Albright and Pearce as being running buddies in Ring of Honor before the NWA title came into the picture. You can look up the Hangman, and Pearce and Brent Albright were a part of that. So it's really cool stuff, man. It's really really fun, and like you said, at that time that Ring of Honor roster was deep, and it wasn't the first time the Ring of Honor recognized an NWA World Champion, because AJ Styles was the last man to bring that belt to Ring of Honor. So if you look at just what Ring of Honor recognizes in terms of NWA champions, you've got AJ Styles, Adam Pearce, Brent Albright, and our world's heavyweight champion right now. That's pretty good company, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. So I mean, we'll just move along quickly, because we are getting to 7 Levels of Hate, but I wanted to dig into Adam Pearce a little bit. No, it's not you. It's also me. And all of us, like, we're just having a good conversation. I think that's part of it, man. And we want to give Pearce the credit he deserves here. This guy's a 5-time NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. Jake Cow's holding up his painted portrait of Adam Pearce there.
Now you just showing off. Man.
I am. What else do I have? What else can I show you? I'm just kidding.
Pearce and Albright feuded for a year before Pearce what's that? Oh yeah, your idol.
Signed by me.
His baseball shrine.
We'll save that for another show.
But anyway, Pearce ends up winning it back from Albright eventually. He goes to Mexico City, takes this thing down there. He loses. He ends up dropping it to Blue Demon Jr. at one point. Gets in a feud with him. He ends up winning it back from Blue Demon Jr. In a three-way. There's Jake Hal's got a Lucha Blue Demon Jr. figure there. That's beautiful. Man. I'm actually kind of jealous of your collection there behind you.
It's all falling down right now. Sorry.
And he even did end up successfully defending the NWO World's Heavyweight Championship against Bryan Danielson at one point. So I did see that. Let's take a break from Pearce for just a second. Let's jump over to, if anybody was concerned, Colt Cabana's still out there. And we'll talk about him briefly. And I say briefly because Colt Cabana is Colt Cabana, and this guy went everywhere. Like Colt was literally the journey pro wrestler. Ring of Honor, WWE, Scotland, Germany, France, PWG, Japan, Austria, OVW, Chikara. Colt was everywhere. Like Colt just did everything. And honestly, it's too much. It's too much to cover. So I just took the moment here to just in my notes to say, like, let's just jump over to Dave Marquez really quick because he starts coming into play because he and Bob Trowbridge. Sorry. They've been running the NWA side of things in TNA before they decided to strip away. And Marquez started up NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And or he was the president over there. And this show was going to develop syndication in the LA area, which I know, at least to me, I was questioning like what that exactly means, because it sounds like it's okay, like the LA area, but like when you look at the numbers here, like if you're in syndication in that area, like you are hitting a crap ton of people. Like this is a pretty big market to be hitting, and so it was getting a lot of eyeballs, especially during this time, which was like just specifically dominated by WWE.
And let me real quick, because I am a Los Angelino kind of.
Right.
I'm in that market anyways, and I'll tell you, the channel that it's on has been around for years. It's like one of the Sinclair channels that I know that's across the country. Like it's not NBC, it's not ABC, it's not Fox or CBS, but KDOC in Southern California is like a Hallmark channel. It's been around for centuries, maybe. It's been around for a long time. So for wrestling, and wrestling had always been on that network throughout the years too. Like they used to show California Championship Wrestling, and before that they used to actually show videos from the original NWA Hollywood, the Tolos and Blassie and stuff like that. So to have Championship Wrestling from Hollywood on KDOC, I know it wasn't their first choice. They wanted to go with the WB affiliate in Southern California, but it wasn't a bad second choice, and that relationship now has lasted for like over a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for like people over on the East Coast, like us, we're more on the eastern side of the country. We don't realize just how big of a market this is, and like how big of a share of the TV space this is. That it's a pretty significant deal. And so when Marquez has this, I mean, and he talked a little bit about this when he was on this show, just about like, okay, yeah, the NWA has, so I know how many people watch my stuff. Like there's a lot of people. And so it's just kind of cool to, you know, even if the YouTube views aren't there, they're on syndication. People do see them. And it's just kind of interesting there. But it was enough to attract a guy like Colt Cabana, who is emerging as a star on his own right. And this guy, who you can ask almost anybody, I mean, a lot of wrestlers we've talked to or covered, they'll credit Colt Cabana as being a guy who I think Eddie King said, even when we were doing the research on him, even credited Colt Cabana as being like one of the first guy they really saw that was like, you can do this and not be in WWE. Like you can do this and not be signed to a major company. You can make something happen for yourself. Colt was starting his podcast, getting a lot of listens there. His popularity was growing, and he was doing this all outside of the machine. And but he saw this opportunity at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and wanted to be a part of that. Basically, he joined up, and David Marquez and Adam Pearce also saw an opportunity with Colt. And I may be wrong here, but I think Adam Pearce actually had the book around this time. He started out as a booker at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Is that right?
No, you are right. He was part of the creative. Obviously, he wasn't the head booker, but he definitely had a handle on some of the matches. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm not trying to drag things up, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that, so you guys remember Wrestling Society X? It was on MTV. Yes. A lot of like car wreck type wrestling. There was a guy on that show called Matt Classic. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. Spoiler alert, but Matt Classic was Colt Cabana, and the mask that he wore on that show was the mask of the Masked Spy Master, which was a gimmick that he and Pearce used wrestling in Southern California in matches where they had to be like they couldn't be Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana. You know what I mean? So they were wrestling as heels, right. and it was kind of like the machines. Like you never knew who was going to be under that mask next. And so, I mean, again, going back to the long-term history between the two, those guys were wrestling together for a long, long time. And so when Hollywood was happening, you know, and I also want to add to Wrestling Society X that Dave Marquez was one of the people involved with the whole process of that show. And when they started booking their arena shows in 2006, Colt Cabana was one of the guys they used twice on the card, because one is Matt Classic and one is Colt Cabana. And so that Dave and Colt Cabana developed this relationship. Dave had this relationship with obviously Adam Pearce. So when they brought everything together in Hollywood, they knew they needed some name stars. So like when that show first started, that show featured Rocky Romero, who, you know, is one of the best junior heavyweights in New Japan. When that show first started, Claudio Castagnoli was on the show. And of course, on the very first episode, Colt Cabana is wrestling and literally calls out the world's champion on the first episode.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely where I wanted to go to. First of all, God bless Dave Marquez. I love that guy. And he deserves a big plaque on the Hall of Fame of Wrestling's wall. I did bring up the Wrestling Society X, although I do remember that very distinctly. We should probably have a whole episode about that because I remember I was at the right age that like I thought like MTV or whatever is doing like a promotion, and I was like, this is going to be a rival of WWE. Like this is huge, and it was nothing. It was kind of, I don't know.
We'll have to take it. We'll have to take a deep dive on that sometime, Gary, because that sounds like a fun show.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, September 2010, NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood starts, and it would become the central spot for NWA activity. Like Jake House said, Colt Cabana and all these other people would be on the show. Somewhere along this way, like David Legata even jumped in as part of the creative team as well, like as the show went on. So that's, you know, coming off of WWF or whatever.
He was the other part of that formula where I said Adam wasn't ahead of the creative, but he was a part of it. Logano was a part of that. That was that era that broke in. In fact, it wasn't just this show. It was the NWA Pro Wrestling. Before it became Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, they were doing the NWA Pro Wrestling Showcase. Logano's a part of that picture. He's helping to do the storylines and the wrestling. They start off in Hollywood. Logano's still part of it, but then obviously he had commitments with Ring of Honor that took precedent.
Now, you mentioned a big part of this that I thought was really beautiful, that you really get a good handle on when you watch the documentary about 7 Levels of Hate. But even as you read about this, you get more and more insight into one of the things you had a good synergy with is guys like Marquez and Adam Pearce are involved in this. And one of the things that they see outside themselves that we see, like it's a similar story as now. So I could even see how it could be frustrating to see it happening now and people not know that this is This is like the reinvention or like the resurgence of the same idea. These guys wanted the NWA to be at the top of their game again. They wanted it to be at the top level of pro wrestling. They wanted the 10 pounds of gold to be the championship. That was their goal. They were doing the same thing that Lightning One, Billy Corgan, and Dave Lagana are doing right now. They were trying this then, and this is in 2010. And David Marquez knew that Adam Pearce was the guy. He was the guy that needed to have that title. And Adam Pearce and David Marquez knew that Colt was the guy that needed to be chasing. And that's what they wanted, because they knew that eventually, once you get there, Colt has that force behind him, that rising popularity that is just going to dominate. Once he can get his hands on the NWA title, this is going to bring eyeballs to the championship. And once again, NWA will mean something. And so that was the goal.
They said something to the effect that at that point he had over 50,000 Twitter followers at a time when NWA had less than 500. And so, it was Colt Cabana could bring a great amount of instant credibility and attention. And I was watching a podcast. It might have been with Eddie Kingston, crediting crediting Colt Cabana and sell himself in a way that nobody else was. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. He talks about having 50,000 followers for the NWA, had 500. It led to a feud between Pearce and Colt that go down in history. But I mean, the thing is that like you can see a lot of the same factors that you see right now happening here. I mean, you can even go back if you start looking through the videos from this time and the stuff that's happening. You can even see touches of like the stuff that Lagana made famous on NWA Power and 10 Pounds of Gold. You can start seeing those little flourishes, the way that things are shot, the way things are done. It's all being done already in 2010. And they did it, man. They really did do it. They built this thing up using those same skills from everybody. Got this thing. I even noted here, like, because I was really digging into the videos around this time, and I was saying, like, Lagana's using the exact same skills he put in 10 Pounds of Gold. He's getting great documentation of this entire process. And on March 6, 2011, Colt Cabana fought Adam Pearce for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, and he won in a hell of a match. Like, he beat Adam Pearce and won the title, and that place goes nuts. And from here, NWA was trending everywhere. A year-long build led to this moment, Colt Cabana beating Pearce, and the NWA was back on the mat. They're no longer a doormat. Clips were viral. Congrats poured in from all sorts of other wrestlers, even other promotions and companies acknowledging the win. And Colt was going to take World's Heavyweight Championship around the world, use his fame as leverage, get the title in front of so many different people. The NWA prestige would be restored, or that's what was supposed to happen. Instead, 6 weeks later, the NWA, they decided to put the title on the Sheik. So
this is oh God, it hurts so bad. I don't care for the Sheik. If you guys ever listen to me talk about the Sheik, I'll tell you, I'm not a fan. And this was a weird time for the NWA because it definitely was going through this growth, this weird phase. Just touching back on that match, this again was at a time Colt Cabana on the very first episode beats Peter Avalon. It's funny how he stuck around for so long. He beats Peter Avalon. Right. And then he makes the challenge that he's gonna take on Adam Pearce, and he's gonna win that title. And you're right, this year-long feud, these attacks, these sabotage, all these things are happening, building up the storyline in Southern California, the second biggest market in the United States. And here you go, boom. I was there in that crowd that night. The electricity was amazing. That Hollywood crowd was so pro Colt. and which is funny because they're pro Pearce almost every other time. But the minute Colt Cabana comes out there, they feed on his energy. It was electric, and I was there at the building. There's like less than 500 people there, but if you're watching it, it feels like there's thousands. And Cabanas promises the crowd on episode 1, if I win the NWA World Title, the first drink's on me. So of course, when he wins the World's Heavyweight Champion, you get a parade of milkmen coming into the arena, handing out milk to everybody in the audience. It was the cheesiest, classiest, like, hey, Colt Cabana is a man of his word. And you're right. We thought we were going to get this long, wonderful reign for Cabana. I mean, he was already booked to go to Pro Wrestling Noah. He was booked. He had like 2 matches. And all because of a promise made to a promoter who had passed away. And that's where things get this is where things get kind of weird. Like Ed Schumann, who was more or less the heart and soul of the NWA Wilderness era. One of those crazy guys, but had a lot of heart and meant a lot to a lot of people. Dave Marquez often mentions him as a mentor-like figure. He was building up membership within the NWA. And one of the people he contacted was Joseph Chabibo, who was the promoter of Pro Wrestling Fusion in Florida, who also happened to wrestle as the Sheik. And Pro Wrestling Fusion had these elegant cards.
It's Joseph Samia now, right?
Yeah.
And
he
MLW, I think.
He had these beautiful like flyers, website, beautiful production. Like at the time, his stuff was looking really good, and he was using some of the top names because I guess Florida's kind of a hotbed for pro wrestling, so there were like a lot of bigger names appearing on his cards. So of course, a promotion like this could bring in a lot of positivity for the NWA. It could make things really exciting. Joe Cabibo, the Sheik, also was so he was of course his own promotions champion. He was the quote-unquote NWA Florida champion. He would then go on to win the NWA Midwest champion, which was, again, Ed Schumann's area. So, Ed was trying to build him up. He wanted the Sheik to be something. And I guess part of the promise to get the Sheik into the NWA was that he was going to get a run with that title. And when Ed Schumann passed away, everyone was like, well, that sucks. And the Sheik's like, wait a minute, there was a promise made. And this is around this time, he'd called out Blue Demon Jr. when he was champion. Those challenges fell on deaf ears. He wins the North American Championship, trying to make way. A lot of people are wanting to see this Adam Pearce versus the Sheik match because, again, you've got our world's heavyweight champion versus this guy who seems to be pretty unstoppable. I mean, he's having these crazy matches in Florida. He's having death matches in Puerto Rico with Savio Vega. He's your North American champion. There are a lot of high production values in his YouTube videos and stuff. So things were looking really cool, but then that all got sidetracked and you've got Colt Cabana, Adam Pearce. You're thinking, man, this is it. This is finally going to happen. Sorry, Sheik, you'll just have to wait in line, but he didn't wait very long. And so he was eventually awarded the championship. And Cabana had, again, the documentary says it had been made a lot of promises that just weren't kept. I think had he kept the title, he would have been defending that title in Pro Wrestling No, which to me was a much, much better deal. And there was a lot of things that just didn't happen. And so although Cabana didn't leave the NWA, he surely was kind of done with all of that. I mean, he wasn't going to get a rematch from the Sheik. And, well, of course, the NWA decided.
It kind of makes it sound like with the passing of Ed Schumann, like Bob Trubich is kind of emotional. Trubich, I will never get that right.
That's all right, man.
He's kind of an emotional state, or because of the politics or whatever you want to call it. He had the final say to do whatever, and just gave it to him.
Yeah,
it's like, all right, we have to put on the Sheik, and of course that killed Cabana momentum.
And I do want to say this, like, because my relationship with the Sheik wasn't all bad. I mean, there was a time where we were we were good, man. I mean, he was posting Alliance Wrestling content on his website, and he would send me press releases and everything else. So we had a pretty good relationship. Obviously, that all soured when all this happened, but I think had he done business with the NWA, I think we would have been talking about him as a multi-champion, at least one more run. But he was unwilling to do business. And again, when I tell you that the Adam Pearce and Sheik rivalry definitely would have made money, because the NWA fans were chomping at that. And again, I can tell you this from experience. Our message was wanted that match. They wanted Sheik and Pearce, and when they got Pearce Cabana, they're like, okay, but they wanted that match. And so when the Sheik had the title, we thought we were going to get that match. In fact, they had booked it for the Ohio State Fair, and this was going to be the match that would headline this big venture back into a small arena, and it was going to be headlined by Pearce and the Sheik. In fact, the NWA sent me a video, and it was a great video of Sheik and Pearce, and they were hyping it up, and they were doing things on the independent scene to kind of heighten it up. The Sheik came to Hollywood and attacked Pearce. The Sheik also attacked Pearce at the NWA Legends Fan Fest the same weekend where he wrestled Bryan Danielson. And so when the Sheik was around, man, and he was hot. I won't take that away from him. He was hot, and he could have probably, I think if he had done business, he probably would have gotten at least one more run with that belt. But he was uninterested in that. He was getting dates with 0-1. They were making him promises. So he took the belt and left. And I mean, legitimately took the belt and left.
So when you try to look this thing up, I mean, they kind of describe it as like the Sheik. Adam Pearce in the documentary says he didn't really trust the Sheik in the first place, or that he had a reputation, basically. But, that Ohio State match that you mentioned, I think that's the one they kind of described like that's where the match is supposed to go down, but then he kind of no-shows it or whatever. They end up having to strip him of the title, but also the Sheik, to his credit, like says that he was never booked or something like that, or what. I mean, I may be mixing up the locations, but basically what it sounds like from what you're saying, that seems like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems a little far-fetched. If he's doing all this other stuff, that he clearly knew that was coming, right?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So they promised him a title run. I don't know how long of a run that was ever promised. You know what I mean? And the Sheik, to his credit, I mean, look, he took that belt to Japan, and when he went to 0-1, which, I mean, 0-1 was never a major wrestling promotion in Japan, but its affiliation with the NWA before TNA really kind of built credibility. And it was kind of like, I would liken it to maybe our Ring of Honor. The talent isn't the same, but in terms of popularity and availability at the time, it was like a Ring of Honor style promotion. And Hashimoto's already gone, and they're looking for big stars. And they brought the Sheik in before he won the title because he has this very interesting gimmick. And again, for a country that loves history, I mean, it was basically he was the reincarnation of the Sheik, Sabu's uncle from Michigan. And so like he was really like, doing this crazy stuff and having death matches in Puerto Rico. So, I mean, he really was building up his portfolio. So when he went to 0-1 as the NWA World Champion, it was a big deal. It was a big deal because the last time the NWA World Heavyweight Championship was in Japan was Hashimoto was 0-1. So having the Sheik bring the NWA title to 0-1 was a big deal. And they did treat him with respect. He ended up unifying the 0-1 championship with the NWA championship. So, I mean, they were doing business, but all along, I mean, that when Pearce was coming back to have that rematch, it was time to let go of the title. And the Sheik says he was double booked for that weekend. But if you go back and check history, he said he had matches in 0-1, but he never went back to Japan. He never had a title defense there, not during that same time period. So I think he was full of shit. And well, I know he was full of shit. Sorry the language, guys, but he just
no, it's fine.
He had no.
The kids are in bed.
Daddy, what? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So he was never had any intention of making that date. And I don't know if he thought the NWA would just go, oh, okay, well, when would be a convenient time? They weren't going to do that. And Pearce was their guy, and they knew Pearce was their guy. They tried to put together a formidable tournament. It was on short notice. I think it was like the difference of a month or two. And obviously the ticket sales weren't great. It wasn't the money match that people were expecting. I don't think that they should have had an event at the Ohio State Fair without a real strong NWA promotion in the area. So it just everything fell flat. But just like that, just like Pearce starts picking up business, and he's taking the belt to places it hadn't been, and he's wrestling all around the U.S. He takes the title to the United Kingdom for the NWA Hammerlock. He takes the title to Germany for WXW, which is, I think, they've been around forever. And again, very comparable to like a Ring of Honor style promotion. They've been around for a very long time. So he's having these matches. I mean, when he was in the UK, he took on Zack Sabre Jr. He was having matches with some pretty decent names at the time. And he comes back to the United States, and what are they going to do? At this point, Adam Pearce knew that the time was starting to run out on his clock. He wasn't ever going to stay pro wrestling for a long time. He thought he had opportunities with Impact. He thought he had opportunities with the WWE. So this was time for him to start winding it down. And the only way to do that, I mean, he even called this tour, this time as champion, is his one last ride. And so he gets into a blood feud with the guy that where it all started, back in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And Gary, don't let me skip things that you want to talk about, but once they get to Hollywood.
No, I mean, it's actually interesting. Like, as you're jumping through there, I'm thinking to myself, like, essentially where we go is NWA had to strip Sheik of the title. As far as I guess Joe Cabibo still has that title. Go back to our David Marquez episode, and he kind of goes off on that a little bit. But yeah, if all of that sounds kind of anticlimactic, it's because it was. Imagine how it felt to everybody involved. I mean, the NWA had to course correct and start over. Yeah, and like J. Cal is raising his hand here.
I was going to ask, J. Cal, were you privy to all this information as it was going on, as like a journalist or whatever you consider yourself?
Yeah. So again, I had a lot of relationships with many of the NWA members, not just the one in Hollywood, but, I knew Ken Taylor. I knew Bob Trowbridge. I knew Fred Rubenstein. So, I mean, I have, I could pull out my phone now and call some of these old guys. We talked a lot, and there were certain things that could be told to me and certain things that couldn't. And I mean, just the other day when I saw somebody asked about the Sheik, and I literally just went through the messages that I had on Facebook where you saw this relationship where we were buddies and we were talking about, hey, when I move out to California, let's grab a drink. Okay, man, it sounds like a good idea. And then, like a month later, take that off your website or I'll sue you. Totally, the relationship evolved very quickly. And, I have a good relationship with Adam Pearce, and I have a good relationship with David Marquez. And there were some things that I was made aware of, and some things during and a lot of things after. And, Bill Behrens is the man that booked the show for that NWA Ohio State Fair. That was his show. That wasn't a David Marquez show or the NWA. That was Bill Behrens. And when he booked that event, I mean, he did so in good faith. He thought that he was going to have Joe Cabibo defend the title there. And it didn't happen because he was selfish. If you guys watch, we're talking about the 7 Levels of Hate documentary, but the History and Tradition DVD of the NWA really goes into this. And even guys who are buddies with the Sheik were like, man, he kind of went into business for himself. And he really kind of put the screws to the NWA. So, yeah, I mean, to answer...
Bill Behrens is coming on Piper's notes, just so you know.
Excellent.
I'm interested interested to talk to the Sheik. I know Jake Cal's not interested, but I'm kind of like, I kind of want to pursue the Sheik. I did not, as an aside, sort of, I've been DMing with this guy. Somebody's like hooked me up with him, and we've been talking about doing an interview. And I was like, and I only know Joseph Samuel, and I was like, oh, he was a former NWA champion. And it wasn't until research for this that I realized exactly who he was. And I'm like, oh, that's gonna be fun. That would be kind of
fun. Just don't tell him you know me, man, because he probably won't come on. Okay. I mean, play me off. You don't know me. We don't know anybody. Because
what did you do to him, J. Cal?
It's that I mean, I was honest. I'm a diehard NWA fan, and if I thought that he was in the right, I would have backed him up. But I feel like it's a time-honored tradition. Yeah. It's a time when you talk about pro wrestling. Like, look, Dory Funk Jr. did not want to lose to Harley Race. He just didn't want to do it. You know, and a lot of people don't want to lose to certain people, but at the end of the day, you are made champion. You have a responsibility to represent that promotion, to represent that history, that legacy. And when you say, no, F that, I'm worried about the Sheik, forget everybody else. And he does what he wants to do. To me, that's a sign that he disrespected the business. He disrespected.
I'm with you, Jake. I'm with you 100%, man. I toe the line on that 100%, man. Khabib.
And I honestly think if he would have played ball, if he'd been like, okay, man, what's the date? I'll be there. You know, he would have had more opportunities with that belt. Again, Pearce didn't know how long he was going to be wrestling for it. His goal was to get off the indies and get signed. And I think he knew he had opportunities outside of the NWA promotion. So, you know,
what's crazy with Pearce for me? Oh, sorry to cut you.
No, you're good.
What's crazy with Pearce for me is like one of the beautiful parts of it, though. Through this whole thing, it seems like his whole goal is he's looking at something bigger than himself, and I really respected that about him. So like even when this moment comes that the Sheik drops the title, or it's stripped from him, all momentum is lost. Adam Pearce, forsaking anything else, steps up to give it another go and says, okay, well, I'm going to take this opportunity on. So on July 31st, 2011, Pearce wins the NWA World Heavyweight Championship for the fourth time by defeating Chance Prophet, Jimmy Rave, and Sean Tempers in a four-way match. And Colt starts his journey back to the top. And the whole time, this is again this idea of like, I mean, to even hear Pearce describe it, and you were there, maybe. I mean, Pearce strikes me as a guy who he could not give less of a shit what you think of him. He's just honest, and so I believe when he talks, like he just has this look about like he seems like an honest guy, like just a straightforward dude, and he's talking about it, and he's like, all right, well, you screwed up. Now you know you screwed up. You put on the wrong person. This should have never happened. Colt should probably still be touring around the globe right now with the 10 pounds of gold. Because that didn't happen, I'm going to come back, and I'm going to take it, and let's do this again. Let's try to get this right this time. And so Colt's making his journey back, and they do the best they can with this feud, which I thought it was kind of cool, the stuff I saw of it. There's Stu Stone and the family Stone. They're kind of like the Heenan family. He's got a stable, and it's problematic for Cabana. They end up in a situation where they're doing a beat down on Cabana. They call down Pearce, like, I know you want a piece of this. Pearce stands up, walks down to the ring, but ends up actually backing Colt and taking these guys out. And they form a bond, so it seems. And they combine their efforts. They take on the family Stone, and it leads to a moment, basically, where that if Colt and Pearce can win this tag match they're in, they get Stone for 5 minutes. They win. And Pearce goes to the back, grabs Stu Stone, brings him out, holds him in the corner, and it's a very cool moment. You could tell, like, especially if you were a person that was really vested at this time, this would have been wild. But Adam Pearce has Stu Stone in the corner, and Colt comes in for one of his signature moves here, and Pearce just lays him out. And then it's on again. Colt versus Adam Pearce. So Colt is after Pearce and NWA Championship, and then this whole time it seemed like Pearce was just doing a thing to keep Colt from the title. Colt's going after the title. You can stop me if I get too far ahead of myself, but on April 8th, 2012, Colt Cabana faces Adam Pearce one more time, and he wins the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Now, after all the other buildup that we just did for everything else, and this doesn't sound quite as exciting, it wasn't. Not to say it wasn't good. It was. And the fans seemed excited. But mostly just in the idea that respect was given back to Cabana. Like, they were given the respect back, and things are going like, all right, let's reset. Let's get back to where we were supposed to be. Colt's back on top. And this time, I mean, lucky for him, he's probably just getting more and more popular. Podcasts are blowing up. Colt's podcast is blowing up. People are traveling from everywhere to see Colt. And now he's got the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. So it's more, in a sense, it's more popular than it's ever been. But supposedly, from my understanding, this whole deal, just that part, wasn't enough for Pearce at the time. He had made a deal that if he was going to do this whole thing, if he was going to go in there and he was going to put in his effort again to get this thing on Colt, that Colt's got to have this thing for a year, and unless they decide otherwise. But Pearce also wanted to make sure that, like, this title reign, this time, it has to be meaningful. It has to mean something. It's not just going to be, let's just give it to Colt and he just freaking drops it off to somebody else later down the road. No, we want Colt to be a legitimate NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And so he wants to prove that this feud can be worth that effort. And so it essentially leads into where we were going the whole time, is this best of 7 series for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. And Pearce, on top of the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship being on the line here, Pearce says, I'm better than you. I can prove that I'm better than you, even though you beat me twice now. If I don't win this best of 7, then I will end my career, basically. And that's what gets us into the best of 7 series. Did I summarize that well enough?
Yeah, no, you're on it. That's exactly what happened. I mean, as you were talking, I just kept thinking, like, it might have made more sense if they just would have done like a Dallas rehash and just had Dave Marquez wake up and it's like, oh, it was a bad dream. The Sheik was never champion. That might have gotten lost on this audience. How young are you guys?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I'm with you, buddy.
I'm the oldest guy here, J. Cal. So
yeah, Rob's about to turn 64.
I've been watching NWA since you were just 4 years old.
Rob's like, I don't watch any new television, so don't talk about Dallas to me.
That's good. That was good. So yeah, I mean, so you're right. It wasn't as it was very anticlimactic. It didn't have the same pop it did the first time. Part of that is because the venue is different. Part of that is it was a different audience. It's weird. The Hollywood crowd doesn't travel. So they started off in Santa Ana, and that crowd did not travel to Brea. And we're talking about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And then from Los Angeles to Glendale, which is like literally 30 minutes away, the audience didn't travel. So it was really weird. And again, the way that they'd built it up, you kind of thought you had this buddy flick going on with Cabana and Pearce. You know, they had been buddies in the past, and that's well documented. So it's not strange to see them working together. You think these two kids from the Midwest, you know, are just going to start taking over. You got Pearce as a champion. Maybe they go after the tag titles. All these thoughts are going through your head, and then the next thing you know, Pearce literally stiffs the shit out of Cabana with a clothesline that damn near took his head off. and it was awesome, but it wasn't that same build. And when that match finally did happen, and the crowd was excited, the crowd was into it. Again, Colt Cabana had a huge following at the time. It wasn't the first time around, and so they did have to make this more meaningful. He did want more for Cabana. He was pissed. Marquez was pissed. There were other wrestlers who literally would tweet, people who potentially could lose bookings from this man, and would say, why in the world did they put the belt on the Sheik? I'm very disappointed in the NWA's decision to put the title on the Sheik. It was such a stark contrast from when Cabana won the title to the Sheik. So all this hate for that guy, and then Cabana wins it again, and it's like, hey, good for you, Cabana, but it didn't carry the same cachet. It honestly didn't. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know about you guys though. Watching this documentary, I did get that impression, but I don't. Let's throw to Rob and Will. You guys, tell me, did you when I was watching the documentary, I was like, well, god dang, like Adam Pearce like jumps in here and he's like, we're gonna make this mean something. He throws out this best of 7 idea and throws the stip down. And by the time this is over, especially, like, I mean, I'm just like, Adam Pearce, book everything. Like, yeah. I was just like, this guy knew what to do, right?
Yeah. And I wonder too, you know, with what you guys are talking about, if it didn't have the same meaning, because maybe with the whole melee that happened with the Sheik, people had maybe lost a little bit of faith in the NWA at the time. And so they were, you know, kind of like, fool me twice, you know, shame on me. So that probably had some to do with it. I mean, just purely looking in from the outside, watching the documentary, that heel turn was huge for me. I love a good heel turn, like an unexpected, well executed heel turn. That was a story that I felt like, you know, and again, I'm looking at just this 2-hour documentary. I didn't live it like you did, J. Cal, and the other people that were there, but you know, I thought that was executed really well, and it came across that way. And then just I mean, you could tell from the promos that they'd show these clips from the promos, and man, Adam Pearce was putting his heart and soul in this. You could tell he cared about this. He wanted this to be huge. He wanted Colt Cabana to get the spotlight that he felt he had deserved a year prior that was robbed from him. And so they were, you know, setting this thing up, and it was a brilliant idea. Honestly, something that we're not used to in modern wrestling because we have such short attention spans. We're not used to now, okay, let's do 7 matches over the span of months, year, whatever, and make them all meaningful. You know, we're used to like quick payoff now. It's like, oh, I got mad at you on Monday night and now we're going to fight at the pay-per-view and then it's going to be over. And so this is just such it was so exciting for me to imagine like living through this and to have that kind of investment into a long-term story. So I thought it was super exciting, but again, you know, I don't have all the context. I was just looking at it from this kind of short retelling of it.
Now, yeah, I mean, my first world champion in my life was Terry Funk, and that's who was champion when I was born. And I've been watching the NWA since I was 4 years old, and I've never stopped watching the NWA. I wasn't blogging or anything, but I remember this going on. I remember Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana and all this stuff. And to me, like, my perspective is like, you know, being, you know, I've always been interested in like liberal arts and literature and history and all that. To me, this was like, this is Greek mythology. I mean, you have the friend who comes in, but he's bitter that he never got his revenge. He never got his rematch. And he has a chance to redeem this loss that manifests in this betrayal. And it's like, this has been her just retold, you know? And go ahead.
It's funny you bring that up because there's a promo out there, and I don't know if it was for the best of 7 or if it was for the world title match before, but Pearce is literally quoting Shakespeare. Colt Cabana, I stabbeth thee. You know, it's really like a very long storied rivalry. And I really think that, you know, this was important to Pearce because this was also, again, this was towards the end of what he was expecting his in-ring career. So he was trying to write a love letter to the NWA, kind of like a legacy piece, right? And he knew that this feud would get over. He knew it. And the idea was that they were building a blueprint to show basically indie wrestling, like, hey, you can make this work. The whole territory system with the NWA, you guys could do this once I'm gone. This can continue to thrive. And if it's not the NWA, then it could be somebody else. But this is how you do it. This is how you make people care. And
that's right. It always worked. It always worked before them, you know. And you're absolutely right. And I love J-Cal, man, because we're really the same, man. Baseball, rock and roll, and wrestling are the same. They're the exact same. They have the same trends, the same things, the same origins. And to me, this is like the perfect origin story. It's just like a ghost story, you know. And it's you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is Robert Johnson, you know, and for this to erupt and then to don't get me wrong. I mean, you guys have heard me say about this. I'm not big into like gimmick matches, except from time to time I am. When it's really important, I'm into them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
right.
this was like this series, like just a series of gimmick matches. Like I have this desire. It transcends my desire. It transcends my desire to win the belt. It just means that I'm better than you, and I will explore that belief in any number of ways, from cage matches to death matches to first blood matches to whatever. I'm convinced I'm better than you, and it's been her, man.
Well, the difference here, like the key difference here, though, is that nowadays, again, to compare it to current, you know, wrestling climate and creativity, the gimmicks are supposed to get the feud over. But in this, the feuds were getting the gimmicks over, and that's how it should be. Yeah. And so you can look throughout history, and you know, I'm like you, Rob. I don't love gimmick matches, but there's some that I do. I mean, there was a classic strap match between Sting and Vader. It wasn't even a title match. It's one of my favorite matches of all time. And it's because the feud made the gimmick interesting. And now there's like a lazy approach where it's like, okay, we've got this match. Well, how do we make it interesting? Well, let's do a tables match. And you're just like, it doesn't translate the same. But that's what was going on here.
We'll do an Idaho barbed wire match, bro. Idaho barbed wire.
Right. Well, that's an excellent thing you just said. Like I didn't even think about before, but that's actually really well said. That the feud meant more. I mean, my big takeaway from this too, if not that, is going to be just the love that's poured into this thing by these guys that are doing this, and especially, I mean, Adam Pearce has elevated himself so high in my mind just because of all the studying I've had to do for just this episode. Just the idea that this guy is putting this whole thing before himself. And I just want to make it clear to anybody who's listening to this later on the podcast or viewing this right now, just that I love NWA Power. I love what Corgan and everyone is doing, but it's just like this guy saw this too. This guy wanted this opportunity for Colt. Like he was trying so hard to like pass this thing to Colt and make it important.
And not to spoil anything, but ultimately, Adam Pearce is he's just a great man. I mean, being a great champion is cool. That's great. And that's great. But being a great man is another thing. And he's such a great man that he even put the championship beyond this. You know what I'm saying? He put Colt Cabana ahead of the championship. You know what I mean? I mean, this is like
this was about. I mean, it's easy to sit there and say all day long that like I want to be the champion or I want to be. So, I mean, he held the belt to an extent. And I look at all this the same way. So I'm not going to take this. Nothing I'm about to say. Am I saying away from anything that's happening currently? All I'm trying to get across here is this is a guy who knew he was the best guy to hold it or right now to get it to the person that it needed to go to. Like he wanted it to mean something.
Now,
it.
Now, Gary, and this is open to anyone here listening. Does that change your Mount Rushmore now?
Well, we said we agreed as a podcast. We agreed that there were 5 people on our podcast, and I think that we put Lurk on it. And I think, did we not put Adam Pearce on it?
I honestly don't remember us ever settling and finalizing.
But I know there was Jake. There was some discussion about that. There was some considerable discussion about Pearce or Aldis, and
I think there's still some discussion. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I think there's still some discussion to have about that, actually, because one of the parts of it is like, how successful are we? I think it's a tough call, and it's like there's the best efforts, and then there's what happens. And so I'm interested to have that discussion as let's dive in. Let's talk about the best of 7 series.
By the success of it, you mean like commercial success, or?
Let's get through the best of 7 series and let's talk about success. Let's actually 2 hours into this discussion finally talk about the 7 levels of hate. No, it's
okay, because I'll wait till after that to disagree with you.
Okay, that's fair enough. So we're here. We're finally here for everybody who's been paying attention. We're actually at 7 levels of hate. We're finally here right now. Without a Pearce versus Colt Cabana, they're going to take this thing on the road, and they're going 7 match, best of 7 series, and they're doing each match as a gimmick match. But as Will said, it's the feud you care about. You just want to see these guys kick the shit out of each other, and so that's what we're here for. Level 1 is the First Blood match. May 13th, 2012, NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Colt Cabana versus Adam Pearce. This was actually in the Glendale, California location. It's just a First Blood stipulation. Blood was seen earlier between these two. This is not the first time one of them is going to make the other one bleed by any means. So it's going to happen. And it probably will just be a minute into the match, but they're gonna do this thing, and they do not hold back. They go at each other. They even bite each other in the match, and they have it. But the beautiful part, the gorgeous art of this part of the feud, is Cabana picks up his win after he repeatedly smashes Pearce's face into a turnbuckle, leaving blood all over the white turnbuckle. And there is just a gorgeous image online that you can find.
Iconic.
Just of Adam Pearce's DNA all over, and not the way that Rob would leave his DNA all over a turnbuckle.
I'm not like that anymore, Gary. I'm not like that anymore.
It's just blood.
And being in that arena and literally seeing Pearce just there it is. Seeing that and that photo was actually by Shane Kidder, who was at the time the number 1 photographer for Hollywood, so he was kind of like the NWA photographer. Any event happened, he was there, and that they literally took that picture 3 or 4 times because it had to be perfect, because that storytelling right there, that's the cover of the old wrestling magazines that had John Tolos on them and Freddie Blassie, and you'd see these guys bleeding like pigs, and that told the story right there. That turnbuckle told the story of vengeance, right? Like the 7 levels of hate. These dudes hate each other. And this blood feud started off in Hollywood. It's going to go around the world. That image had to be so meaningful. I've seen that photo, they edited to be black and white with the color on it, with the red. And it's haunting. It's really haunting.
The funny thing, Jake, that's actually not the photo. That's from my bathroom after using the Manscaped 2.0.
Oh, God.
I was told it was a 3.0. I was.
What is wrong with you?
But the other.
By the way, this podcast is sponsored by Manscaped.com. Jake Cal just gave up. Use code NWA Pod for 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com. Rob clearly does not know how to use Manscaped material, but
evidently the 3.0 that Will has is like a lot smoother on the skin. But I will tell you, the Pearce Cabana turnbuckle photo is very similar to that. But that came from my iPhone. So
I don't know why we even, but you actively try to push away sponsors. That's the problem we have here.
They're lying, bro. The Manscaped is lying, dude. When they say it's smooth,
Rob, you settle down. Somebody, can I mute Rob?
Get over.
I got it muted. I got it muted. Manscaped.com, code NWAPod. It's 20% off and free shipping. I love my Manscaped. The lawnmower, it's incredible. Anyway,
I've officially never laughed that hard on YouTube or any kind of camera before, so thank you, Rob.
Oh my God.
I'm literally wiping tears, guys. Jesus.
Freaking Gary just muted me, dude. For real.
Dude, you were attacking our sponsor. Rob.
You just got put.
I clearly said the 3.0 was probably pretty good. The 2.0 will cut you up.
Oh, jeez. Am I going to mute you again? Like, what
He's
is
trying
happening
to.
here?
He's trying to upsell. He's trying to upsell people. He's like, don't get the 2.0, get the 3.0
3.0, man.
Makes sense.
He's upselling. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Classic marketing.
Fair enough. Will, do you have anything else you want to add to this? I appreciate you putting
I have absolutely nothing else I want to add to this.
Okay. Let's move on to level 2, everybody. The Colts up by 1. Level 2 is a Boston street fight taking place on June 8, 2012 at NECW Stronger Than Hurt. It was in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. It's New England Championship Wrestling. So basically these two guys brawl all over the building and they beat the hell out of each other. There's still blood in this one. Thank God it wasn't a first blood match. But Cabana ends up making Pearce pass out in this finish. So Pearce, proving his toughness, would not tap out. And he just ends up passing out. And this gives Cabana a 2-match lead and a big advantage there. Anything to add to that, fellas?
So it was a good kind of rebound for the storytelling. New England Championship Wrestling at the time, they're a smaller wrestling promotion, but the promotion out there, Sheldon Goldberg, the promoter, has always had a good relationship with David Marquez. And again, he had worked with the NWA in previous incarnations and was really happy to have that match. The world title, believe it or not, really didn't travel to the Northeast very often, unless it was through Ring of Honor. There wasn't a lot of strong NWA promotions in the Northeast, and the promotions that were there weren't really booking the world's heavyweight champion. So it was nice to see the title in that part of the country. It was nice, especially because they hosted just the one match of Reclaiming the Glory. So there was some connection and some history to that NWA World Championship. And it was cool to see that match happen there. And again, they don't headline NECW. They aren't NECW talents, but based on the momentum that they had from Cabana's first run as champion, and then what's coming out now, social media is a lot more active. There's YouTube, there's ways to get these videos out there. People were buying in, and it was a lot of fun. And that was a great match to kind of kick it off out of Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we see in the documentary, like the promotion talking about that, like just these two guys, if anything, just selling out just based on vignettes, based on promos they're cutting leading up to an event. They're not actually from this region. They're not actually like wrestlers in this promotion or anything, but they end up selling this thing out later a couple of times, I guess. But that's a really good point. it just it proves it's a thing that proves the case that, like, when we look at a thing like what the NWA has done now, this is very valuable history and contextual history for like what we're seeing now with the 10 pounds of gold series and what potentially the NWA could still do from here. Given their limitations, that like this can still be done. I mean, this is yet another reason I'm just gonna like bow down and kiss Adam Pearce's ass, that like I'm like, you started this thing, and now, like, I mean, and yeah, Lagana's involved, like Marquez is involved, like people are involved in this thing, but it proves there's so much more to making a great wrestling feud than what he thinks.
Right.
Yep.
So we'll jump it. Rob's all giddy over there still.
No, I'm agreeing.
Level 3, we jump into an I Quit match, and that takes place at 7/7/2012. Huh?
Still Dominion. They're going back home. This is back to the origins.
Yeah. So here they are. It's in Hopkins, Minnesota. It's still Domain Wrestling. Stipulation: I quit. And going into the match, neither man, obviously they were not like guys that seemed like they would be like, I quit. Literally, the last match, I mean, what was cool about this is there's some consistency here, is that in the last match, Pearce passed out before saying I'm quit. So that adds context. Again, I'm all about this context stuff. I keep saying that. But so now you've got to make one of them say I quit. Is Colt Cabana going to say I quit? Is Adam Pearce going to say I quit? Neither one of them seems like a guy who would do it. Adam Pearce ends up disconnecting the top rope from the turnbuckle. He chokes out Cabana. Cabana ends up passing out, not unlike what Pearce did the match before, and the ref ends the match, and he awards the victory to Adam Pearce. But as they're announcing that victory, Colt Cabana wakes up, pulls the ref's arm down before they can make that announcement, and says, I did not and would not ever say I quit. And the match has to be restarted. And Cabana ends up locking Billy, the Billy Goat's curse up on Pearce with the rope around his throat. Pearce ends up, he can't handle it. He does end up saying, I quit in this match, as a heel should, in my opinion. I mean, that's the way that it should work out. I see Rob shaking his head. We'll get his thoughts. But at the end of the day, Colt Cabana is now up 3-0.
Yeah, this is one of the great injustices in the history of professional wrestling. The referee, the official, called the match. You have never seen a football game, a baseball game, anything where the umps came back and said, you know what, like, let's restart the whole thing. This is bull. As an Adam Pearce fan, I respect Colt Cabana. I've never been a big Colt Cabana fan, but this is Adam Pearce was robbed in this match. He was robbed. This should be 2-1 right here. I said it.
Yeah. I enjoy Adam Pearce. Don't get me wrong. I am all about some Adam Pearce, but on a meta level, like, I believe Adam Pearce has great vision for the rest industry.
I can't believe you hate Adam Pearce so much, dude. Did the ref not call the match and give it to Adam Pearce?
He lost this match. Who said I quit? Adam Pearce said I quit. He
lost the match the second time. He won it the first time. He won this match the first time, and then he lost it the second time. I hate this story writing.
Nah, dog, he didn't say I quit.
He freaking
God dang, you don't pay attention to the rules.
He was foaming at the mouth.
It's in the name of the match. He didn't say that.
I feel like this is turning it into a competition. I feel like you're trying to see who's going to get me to laugh the most.
The ref gave him the match, man, and then he restarted it. It's wrong.
Oh, you need to pay attention to the damn title of the match. That's all I'm saying.
Hold on,
just
man.
like making up rules now.
Go back and look at my notes here. Referee awards match to Adam Pearce. Then suddenly Cabana wakes up and decides, I want to wrestle again. That's how I saw it.
That's why Rob calls this feud the 8 levels of hate, because technically that was
9
2
levels.
different
Actually,
matches.
9 levels.
No, he's actually being honest. There's actually 9 levels to this, but that's something that doesn't go into this documentary.
Oh, we're getting there. Yeah, we'll still go into it.
All right.
So yeah, we're still trying to work our way there. We're just gonna be here all night. So because Rob's got to be a bitch. Level number 4.
Hey, Gary. This has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a bitch. This has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a bitch.
This is like the least of the reasons.
Yeah, there are many other reasons. It's not this one. I'm right on this one. I'm a bitch for any number of reasons, but not this one.
Oh, man. Level number 4 is the best 2 out of 3 falls match. Dated, by the way, 7/21/2012. Before we end this podcast, I was happy to at least get here so we can say this is officially the anniversary level 4 of the 7 levels of hate.
Yeah, if this had gone on for
today's.
If this had gone on for another 30 minutes, you wouldn't have been able to say that. So we made it.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm glad we finally did get here. We made it this far. Kansas City, Metro Pro Wrestling, 2 out of 3 falls.
Would it be appropriate for me to say,
Rob?
and I'm going to ask you this on the air, tell me if I'm inappropriate. Would it be inappropriate? Never mind. Go ahead. No, I'm not even going to ask.
Don't ask me on the air. Appropriate.
Would we all agree?
We got a whole goddamn Discord chat. You got my phone number.
Go ahead.
Text me. Like, what are you talking about? If this involves Manscaped again, don't even bring it up.
I was just going to say, never mind. Let's talk on the after party about this match 4.
So one thing I want to say about Metro Pro Wrestling is at the time they were on the was it like the Fox Sport affiliate out there? It was Metro Sports Channel. They got a lot of visibility. They were on in a lot of markets, or not a lot of markets, but a very solid market in Kansas City. So they really did get some mileage, and this match was on there. You know, they featured clips of it because they weren't really showing full matches on the programs, but that match did happen at Metro Pro, which was considered, like I said, kind of a big deal at the time. And that, 2 out of 3 falls. I mean, we started adding second levels because of the last match. I mean, you've got at least 2 or 3 more levels here because it's the best 2 out of 3.
Yep.
Oh, you got Rob? Because it doesn't feel like that's all you got.
No. J. Cal's perfect. What he said was right.
Okay. All right.
It's only you that he's disagreeing with tonight, Gary.
It feels that way. It does feel that way.
What? I didn't disagree. What? I said I was
the feud. Next
Rob's
week is the feud. Gary versus Rob.
Yeah.
I just disagree with the outcome. No, J. Cal's usually on it, man. 7 times out of 10, he's on it.
Anyway, Adam Pearce was very sick during the match. He still went in there and did it. He had to bitch out Colt Cabana because Colt was like calling a bunch of headlock takeover flips and flops. And it was like, dude, come on, man. Seriously, I'm sick. Stop it. I did enjoy that part of the documentary version of this. Anyway, match number 4. By the way, if you go through and actually watch these matches, at this point, this was my favorite match of the series so far. I thought this was the best one.
It's reminiscent of Michael Jordan winning that Game 7 when he had the 103-degree fever. Mm-hmm. Pearce was not feeling well. I didn't talk to him then. I'm not that close, but we did talk after the match, and he was telling me how sick he was that the entire time. He just stayed in his hotel room drinking Gatorade, really just to kind of stay hydrated. And when he gets out to the show, they put on an excellent match. Again, you wouldn't expect anything less from these two, but the fact that knowing that Pearce wasn't doing his best, they couldn't reshoot it. They had to do it then and there. So he really rise to the occasion for this situation.
I haven't
pretty incredible because like I get like kind of bitchy when I'm sick. I like to think that I'm a super tough guy, but sometimes if I'm gonna have, yeah, no, you shut up. When if I have like over 100-degree temperature, I would be on the couch like not doing anything, and like Pearce is out here having the match of his life, and that's pretty impressive. It's not anything I'd expect out of a Rob Stead or anybody related to him.
Well, I was gonna say, like in the documentary, Pearce says, I was sick, and if people say this was a good match, that was all Colt Cabana carrying it. But then they proceed to show these clips of him like doing still like superhuman, wrestling spots and things like that. So I think he was being pretty humble with that assessment that he did come out and showed out and despite the circumstance, was able to perform at a high level, which is commendable.
Right. I was going to say this was reminiscent of the final 30 minutes of the Bearded Trio Summit when Gary was struggling to make it to the car. it was like, I was like, dude, man, this is like freaking match 4, man.
Hey, Rob, if you want to side out at any point, don't feel bad. I know it's getting late, so you can go on. We got Jake out here, and pretty much right now you're about as important as the white crayon, so you can just feel free to step on out. Anyway, let's keep this thing going.
Did you say white crayon? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
did I hear correct?
White crayon. You did.
I love it. I love it.
Hey,
all right, let's go.
Coming at you, bro. Cancel culture's coming at you now. It's true, dude.
I'm just kidding. Hey, man, I'm not saying I hate you, Rob. I'm just playing around. But I would unplug your life support to charge my phone. Anyway, level number 5 was dog collar match on 8/18/2012. Bridgewater, Massachusetts at New England Championship Wrestling. This was probably the most brutal match in the series. If I had to pick, these guys really went after it here. They took that chain, like no lie, go watch this match. They take that chain and they beat the hell out of each other. And there is a lot of blood, so you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of that if you like that kind of thing. And they just beat the hell out of each other. Pearce does eventually win this match when he wraps Colt up and drops the pile driver. Gets the 1, 2, 3. Pearce still in this.
Correct.
Yep. Point,
So I don't know exactly the timetable, but this kind of happens around the lawsuit. Things are starting to get really, really ugly. And
this
I mean,
is on my notes, Cal, that right between sometime between August and September, this is the Tharp Quillo lawsuit against the NWA for insurance fraud.
Now, and the thing about this too is, so when this is going on, NECW originally wasn't going to be the spot where that next match happens. I believe it was going to be Hollywood or a promotion that is affiliated with David Marquez. And now because this loss, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I know that the last match in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, when we get to level 7, I for some reason had this at after 6, but I could be wrong. God, if anybody cares, I'm just gonna tell you exactly now. I found an article of Mike Johnson that tries to summarize this bullshit in the best possible way. I'm sorry, I'm already cursing too. But basically, this lawsuit was ongoing, and it was finalized in January of this year. But basically, the article says the ownership and management of the NWA brand will be transferred from the Pro Wrestling Organization LLC, managed by Bob Trobich, who pretty much saved the promotion going into destruction back in 1989, with the last true member of meaning, Jim Crockett Promotions, was bought by TBS, creating World Championship Wrestling, to a new LLC believed to be headed by R. Bruce Tharp, Chris Rodquillo, and Fred Rubenstein. Torbich is now out of the company.
Here's my question, J. Cal, and I don't want to get too deep into like the minutia of it, but like Rubenstein, how does Rubenstein get into this group of owners? Because he was a player prior to this and was on the opposite side.
So the NWA has always been very red state, blue state. Their allegiances have been very, very thinly held onto. And some guys were always looking out what was best for some guys. Now, I've had Fred on my podcast since this has happened. But he was somebody who saw an opportunity and took advantage of it. Essentially, pro wrestling organization had been using an insurance, depending on who you want to believe, which was supposed to. And Rob, you might actually know more about this than anyone else on here because you deal with the school, the athletic department. You might have to deal with the insurance for these buildings that are on campus. But, every time the NWA runs a show, buildings require insurance. In some states, you can't run a show without proof of insurance. It's always a good idea. And the NWA had a liability insurance set up when it was a much, much smaller organization. And it was actually one of the benefits of joining the NWA is that you got to use this insurance. So if somebody got hurt at one of your shows, you're covered. Now, they was always meant to be for the smaller audience. Apparently, when the shows start getting larger audiences, these things weren't taken into consideration. Now, the other side of the story that I heard is that it's always was a percentage of audiences scaled out throughout the entire year. So when you have a promotion like NWA Hollywood, who's packing 400, 300 people to a show, and you got a wrestling promotion in Indiana that's lucky to get 28 people, that it was an average. So these kind of checks and balances got everything together. But that's not what happened. And that's not what Bruce Tharp alleged. And again, I just calling history. The NWA, all these agreements were signed in Charlotte, North Carolina when this lawsuit happened. They wanted to do it in Texas and Brownsville, where Bruce Tharp was an attorney, where he knew lots of judges. If you can see where this is going, it feels a little bit icky. But Fred was a member who saw the opportunity, and he wasn't the only member. There were others who maybe they weren't members but affiliates that left, like Mike Searcy backed him up. There was a few other wrestling promotions. Dave Marquez was on the fence. Dave Marquez was offered an opportunity to help these guys remove the old NWA president, Bob Trowbridge. And when Marquez kind of refused to do that, he became part of the problem. So when they made their lawsuit, he was one of the people that was heavily involved in that. So, excuse me.
Right.
So
in the documentary, it almost sounds when Marquez comments on this, it almost sounds like a hint of like betrayal almost. I don't know if that's the right word, but he definitely feels that way. It seems to me.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, this whole thing was kind of, like I said, it was very icky. These guys were all members. They all were shareholders, if you will, about the NWA. And a lot of people didn't like when the NWA split with TNA. And a lot of the NWA didn't like Marquez because he was getting a lot of cachet for what Hollywood was doing and being on in a big market and him having, I don't want to say control, but a lot of say on who the champions were because they were appearing on his shows. So it really did have a yucky feeling to it. And I mean, I'll be honest. Go ahead. No, you go right ahead.
So do you think that this was where they felt threatened by Marquez? Is that what it amounts to essentially?
No, what it was is Bruce Tharpe had aspirations to be Bob Trowbridge. He wanted to be the president of the NWA, and they, there was never a problem with Marquez. And I mean, if you even look, I mean, Tharpe was using one of David Marquez's original creative guys, Carmen Despirito, who was out of the Midwest, who, one of the guys that was booking Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana back in the early days. He booked for Marquez during those arena shows back in 2006, 2007, and he relocated to Texas, and he was part of Bruce Tharpe's company. He was Bruce's booker. And so as all this stuff is starting to come to fruition, it was never a threat. I think they wanted Dave Marquez. It's just that he was loyal to Bob Trowbridge, and why wouldn't you? Bob Trowbridge was an
why then is there's this, like, Adam Pearce was told, essentially ordered, that he can't defend the belt on the Marquez promotion after this if there wasn't a threat or anything.
Because I think either the lawsuit had been filed already or was about to drop. And I think at this point it had already been filed. I don't have any notes with me because I wasn't sure I was going to be here tonight. But
Right.
I'm pretty sure they had already filed it, and there was already court documents going on. And I think at this point it was already known that Pro Wrestling Organization was going to transfer its assets to the International Wrestling Corporation. Thus, the NWA would be transferred to Bruce Tharpe. I think that was already happening. I'm sure Gary can correct me on that.
This is when he's told not to go on the Marquez.
Oh, it was because he was part. He was part of the lawsuit. I'm sorry to talk over you.
No.
Yeah, Marquez was part of the lawsuit. So at this point, he was the enemy. At this point, he was. They had a judgment against him, and they didn't want the NWA to have anything to do with Dave Marquez because he had an opportunity to go with them. He didn't do it, and you're dead to me. So
this is not a I'm threatened by you matter. It's a procedural litigious matter. This is a matter that we're in litigation, and therefore because of because like you said, I've dealt with insurance claims 100 times. We deal with 20 a year. That's just the nature of the business. We have a whole department in our system that just deals with that because it's going to happen. And it's very rarely is it anything personal. It's usually a formal matter that because we're in litigation, we're not going to be working.
Well, and the thing about it is there was never this insurance claim that set this lawsuit off. It's what it always appeared to me on the outside was they found a way to get, they wanted to remove Robert Trowbridge, but they wanted Texas to get a bigger piece of that pie, and they wanted to have a bigger say. And when they found this loophole, they're like, all right, now we have our in. And there were Fred, his affiliated promotions were still using this corrupt insurance in the middle of the lawsuit. So how bad could that insurance have been if his people were still using it? The whole thing seemed like a sham to begin with, but again, where it was in the courts, the NWA, the NWA back then wasn't like just raking in the dough. There was no really money coming in except for membership dues and the things they have to pay out, titles and stuff. So it's not like they were, the members were rich. There was just this opportunity. Marquez probably put millions of dollars into the NWA, and his brand grew from being associated with it, but I don't think he's ever recouped the money that he's put into the NWA. And with that with that being said, there wasn't a lot there, and the promoters couldn't fight. So they all agreed to, instead of you taking money out of my pockets, well, you just take my ownership of the NWA. It was the ultimate, like, well, we don't got money, so I guess we're doing dishes.
It's a matter of association, and all this drama, like all this is going on by the time that match 6 happens, which is in there had been a match. I guess they were expecting either match 6 or 7 to take place in the Marquez promotion, but as it turns out, match 6 is in Oregon Salem.
Yeah, well, and now that match, what the funny thing is at that time Marquez kind of had a connection up there. He the guy who runs that promotion was part of the family Stone, going back to the NWA Hollywood, and his name is Jeff. I can't remember his last name right now, but he went by Morty on the TV show. So Morty picked that match up in Salem. In fact, my buddy was the referee for that match, Jay Stone. And again, the West Coast Championship Wrestling, they were affiliated to the NWA through Marquez. They weren't going to stick around after that lawsuit. So this was again, I think they didn't change the match because I just think it was easy to do, but they were not going to go back to Hollywood for match 7, which was the original plan, because that's where it all started.
So, JK, real quick, and I don't want to get into too much minutia, but it's if I remember correctly from the documentary, they were saying that there were 6 affiliates at the time that slowly began to drop. There was New England Championship Wrestling,
yep,
Steel Domain, Metro Pro, NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, West Coast Wrestling, and Warzone. And then it steadily dropped to like 2 or 3 at this point.
Are you talking about NWA promotions or
NWA affiliates?
Well, they still had big numbers in Tennessee and in Texas. In fact, there was a lot of promotions who started gaining more momentum, like NWA Smoky Mountain really benefited from that. There was Ring Warriors in Florida, but in Texas there was the obviously Chris Ronquillo's promotion, the NWA Houston, Branded Outlaw Wrestling. And there were a lot of promotions, and then of course we're still talking about we didn't even get to New Jersey with like promotions like Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators and NWA Force One. So there was a lot of these wrestling promotions still affiliated with the NWA, and the membership was still pretty much intact. New England Championship Wrestling, West Coast Wrestling Connection, a lot of these were just affiliated through the NWA through Marquez. That Warzone Wrestling in Australia, I don't know that they were affiliated directly through Marquez, but again, they played a big role in all of this as well.
Are they paying like membership dues? Because I know that like Ronquillo, he was one of the big winners of the lawsuit. Are these promotions, are they paying lawsuits or are they paying dues to the NWA to be able to, or is all that over at this point?
So when the ownership change happens, and I'm not exactly sure where we're at on the documentary versus what's happened, what we're talking about, Robert, but when prior to that there was NWA memberships, and these were people who bought their areas. So like David Marquez was the membership of record for California. He bought the California membership, and he was at the time, for some time, he was Antonio Inoki's proxy vote. So he had Japan and California as votes. And then Ken Taylor had Texas. And then Ken Taylor was kind of forced out by Bruce Tharp in that area. It's kind of had a history of it. And then Fred Rubenstein had New Jersey, and Rick O'Brien had Virginia, and Ed Schumann had pretty much the entire Midwest. And so all of these areas in Tennessee, it was, gosh, I can't think of his name right now. Not important. Mike Porter. And so there's all these promoters and so they're members, they're actual members. Bill Barron's an actual member, but then you also have affiliates. In Los Angeles, Dave Marquez had like 8 affiliates at one point. He had, actually even more than that, because out of state and out of the country. And that agreement was led up to the member of record and the affiliate. Now, if they charge dues or not charge dues, whatever, it was just mostly that those promotions could use the NWA name in your area without any problems. And then there were associates who, again, were connected to the NWA, but it was loose. It was a looser affiliation. So,
right, but the affiliates owed the authority resided with the members,
right?
Primarily.
And then when the ownership changes, it went from you buy a membership that you pay for a lease, and that lease was only good for a year. And there's a lot of like going over the language of those leases. Like you basically were surrendering your tape library to the NWA, and a lot of these other real wild things. You had to book champions. You had everything was set, so you had to change your even referee shirts had to be uniformed. So
yeah, I if I could jump in here, I mean, I was looking at this lawsuit here. Like in the article, I had just like tagged in my notes. It said that it was designed specifically to target Trowbridge. And based on his exit, the strategy appears to have been successful. Tharp had only been an NWA member for a short time before filing the lawsuit. But it says the new management believes they have a plan to revitalize the brand, which, as of this writing, has very little national awareness. And only one member, Dave Marquez's NWA Hollywood, really makes any ripples beyond their local area with recent NWA title changes and regular TV tapings. We kind of talked about that, just like how it's a bigger area than you think, but they just like act like it's just like a small little thing. But it says, as part of the settlement, the new LLC takes full ownership of any and all NWA trademarks, brands, copyrights, logos, and any physical assets, title belts, etc., online and social media accounts, all intellectual property of the brand itself. All of the NWA business will now go through the new LLC as well. Promoters like Michael Porter and Kenny McCoy will be conceding portions of their territories in Central Tennessee and Kentucky to the new LLC. Beyond that, there are no changes among who is running what area and has rights to the NWA area in that geographic boundary. They will still be required to pay annual dues. Only their areas respect boundaries. The NWA board members who agreed to are now considered licensees of the brand and will remain licensees in perpetuity as long as they remain members of the NWA in good standing. Now, all licensees are required to discuss the transfer of power, and any members allowed. No members are allowed to disparage the organization or any other publicly or they're publicly under threat of having their membership revoked. Sorry, I was trying to read through that, but so it went from like this. It sounds like from the shareholder thing, like everybody's got a stake in this, everybody's voting on it, to like now truly owned, and you're part of like you. I think you guys kind of covered this, but like you're paying in to like use the shit, but otherwise you have no control over anything.
And during this time, it was seriously like Armageddon for all these former NWA promoters. You know, their Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, all of that. The new NWA, oh, you didn't sign with us? You didn't want to be a part of this? You're dead. And they literally went through and cut all these social media channels, Facebook, Instagram. Or I don't think Instagram was really a thing yet, but Twitter. They were getting these pages taken down. And, people have thousands and thousands of followers for their promotion, and now instantly all that's gone. Really brutal.
What's funny about that? Did that happen with? I know we got to get through these 7 levels of hate, but did that happen with Billy? Like when they took over the?
No,
it feels like there were like people that still try to use it, like that. That one dude over in Virginia that runs like that put out the tweet the other day that this is like a month ago now, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like,
yeah,
they were like that even Marquez chimed in. It was like, hey man, maybe you should shut up, or before Billy comes after you for using NWA. And,
the guy in Charlotte, So again, all these licensees are taking over, and they were shutting down anybody who had this NWA name before. Now, the guy in Charlotte, I don't know how much you want to even talk about him, but he basically had a deal in perpetuity to use that name, and the old ownership was like, whatever, we don't really care. And Tharp actually came in on him as well and was like, nope, you're not using that name anymore. So his events were changed, but he never changed the social media, and I don't really know why they didn't go after him for it. But he's one of the few guys that kept the initials, and no one ever really went after him. But it was crazy.
Well, fellas, we still got people in the chat and stuff, and people are still watching. So let's get through this thing, and let's get to the point that we communicate with the chat room. and talk about this. We've gone through the lawsuit, so obviously things are getting out of hand. Things are getting a little, at least at this point. But we do get into the Texas Death Match at level number 6, September 30th, 2012. Now the NWA champion is Adam Pearce at this point. He's defending against Colt Cabana. They go into the Texas Death Match. These men hate each other. And one thing I love is no matter what, God bless him. I mean, I know documentaries can be one-sided, but God bless Adam Pearce that he still is like sounding like, I'm going to deliver what I promised to the people. And we're going to escalate this thing. We're going to fight. And this feud certainly keeps escalating. Like, it never stops. This match, level number 6, literally ends because Cabana gets set on fire. and Pearce wins. Like, that's what else do you want? It's like that's how they end the Texas Death Match. It's like the dude's on fire. He lost.
Dawkins actually wrote a song about this match that they used in.
Shut your mouth. Into the fire.
Into the fire. Yeah.
Anyway.
Size it up,
All
man.
right.
3-3.
All right. Screw it. Let's go into number 7. This is the time I had it. Okay.
One second. Is after this match, it's after match number 6, that the NWA decides that it will, quote unquote, no longer pursue a relationship with Colt Cabana. It's after this match.
Thank you.
Yeah. And actually, no, you're 100% right, Rod, but I'm glad you brought that up because this is actually in the part, like if I went and looked at my notes here, this is actually at the point where they also were like, we have no relationship with Colt. Oh, hello, little child.
This is my Piper's notes.
Piper. I know Piper. Piper's been on my show before.
All right, Scram, we're talking wrestling.
Hey, Piper.
You like wrestling?
I'm melt when I see kids, man. I'm done.
Oh, I love kids
down
too.
for the rest of the show, bro. I'm down for the rest of the show.
No, we're just a bunch of bearded kid fans. Like we're bearded softies over here. No, this is the point though that yes, they don't want Colt. They make it. They express their disdain or their disillusion with Colt Cabana for being a champion. They're like, all right, Adam Pearce, you're okay. Like, you can hold the belt for a while. And Adam Pearce sticks to his guns. Now, again, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about, like, I mean, obviously a documentary could be one-sided, but God bless it. Like, I watched this thing and I'm like, Adam Pearce, you're a man's man and good on you for standing up here. And he's like, no, we promised these people a certain thing and we're going to deliver on this thing. And we're going through with 7 levels of hate and we're going to keep going. And Colt Cabana, this thing was going to a destination and we're going to hit that destination. And so they finally come back to him and they're like, all right, so before you go into match number 7, we need you to stop by West Virginia. We need you to drop the belt to Damian Wayne. And he says, okay, fair enough. You can pay everybody that I've promised I'm going to show up for as the world champion. And you can pay for the plane tickets. You can pay for the tickets there, the booking fees, everything else. If you do that, that's fine. And of course, nobody wants to do that. David Marquez is even in there. I mean, what? I don't feel like David Marquez has any reason to lie about this. He's just like, no, he's like, even almost separately, David Marquez is in the documentary talking about, like, if I know the Adam Pearce I know, he said, hey, if you pay for literally everything else involved in this, then sure. But otherwise, F off. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't happen. Adam Pearce does not go to West Virginia and drop the title belt to Damian Wade. They just decide because of the lawsuit, they can't pursue a match number 7 in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which is where it was supposed to end up. By the way, I don't know about you guys, but I got like so much more respect and like knowledge about what Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is from just this whole thing. But he says, shut your mouth.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Yeah, I actually just grabbed my phone to look at something, and
in fact, anytime Rob talks, interrupt.
and I'm quoting an email. Like I said, I'm not interested in going backwards on film or through a message exchange. It's not of interest. It's ancient history. I'm sure my decline works well for your cause. That's why I sent it. Happy to help. I'm doing better than well. Every year gets better than the last. Continued well wishes for you. Take care. That's actually not what I thought it was going to be, but basically that was Chris Ronquillo refusing to be a part of the documentary, refusing to be on board with that. What I was getting at is I did see a lot of emails during this time while this was happening, not afterwards, not after the show was shot, but during this time, and you could see that the three bozos in charge of the NWA did not take any chance to step over each other every single time. They weren't on the same page, but they did not want Colt Cabana. And mostly that's because Colt Cabana flat out said, look, I have my schedule. We'll see when I can book you guys in. Because he was promised. Now they're going back on their word. It's the NWA. It's in some regards, it's not really those guys' fault, because if you get a brand new toy, you want to play with it. They want to put their spin on the NWA. I just think they were stupid not to want to do business with Colt Cabana.
I mean, as far as like people that aren't in a major promotion, like who's the guy you want to do business with? It's the guy with the most visibility. Like it seems to make sense. And he said, I think he speaks on that, in the documentary about like, look, I book months in advance. Like he's like, if you give me the dates that you need me to be at, I'll be there, but I need to know in advance because I do a lot of my stuff way in advance. That's part of the deal. Like I work my ass off. I work 4 days a week wrestling. Like, and so other days I'm traveling. And so it's like, you gotta work with me here. And
this is a guy who's wrestling in Japan. I mean, he's wrestling for Pro Wrestling Noah. I mean, even recently he started appearing in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's not like this guy's a slouch. He's a great athlete. He's a great wrestler, and he's working everywhere but the WWE. So that NWA World's title could have kept traveling the globe, and there would have been a lot of prestige involved. But again, they wanted to put their own stink on it, and hey, let's drop it to Damian Wayne, and you were already addressing that.
Yeah. So that's where they go with it. But of course, Adam Pearce turns that shot down, and he's like, "We're doing this either way." And if it can't happen in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, they actually get an offer to go to Melbourne, Australia. And they actually, like, what even more beautiful for those guys, which you have to buy that, like, they're legit human beings. They like look at this as like, oh, maybe this is better. Like, it's more international. Like, this is kind of cool. Like, we're going to Australia and we're going to do the match there. And although the NWA has stepped in now and they're like, we're not going to sanction this match. The match does take place at Warzone Wrestling inside a steel cage. NWA is not sanctioning this match, but these guys go into it even about like, you know what? It's not even about the title so much anymore. This one's about who's the better wrestler. And they got guys, if you can find this match online, they go at it. Like they beat the hell out of each other. And I mean, there is a Colt like jumps off the top of the cage, hits a huge splash. They just destroy each other in this match. But Colt does hit that splash, hits the Billy Goat's curse, and submits Pearce. Pearce gives up. Colt Cabana wins the 7 levels of hate.
Right.
Now, at the end of the match, Colt and Adam cut, I think, some of the greatest promos in pro wrestling. Like, I think they do a great job here, and it would not stand out like if you're just like constantly interested in like only WWE, but if you're interested in pro wrestling history, if you're interested in the legacy, if you're interested especially in NWA, this is some of the best stuff ever. They cut these promos where they talk about how outdated the NWA is, and it's about the wrestlers, not the title. Pearce ends up, after all of this, Pearce says that Cabana deserves this title, and he hands it to him. And Cabana won't accept the title. He says, I don't want it. If you don't want it, I don't want it. He tries to hand it back. Pearce said he made a promise that he would leave the NWA if he lost this series. And Cabana says, well, I'm not taking it. And they both simultaneously, hand in hand with the NWA title, drop it on the ground. And they leave it laying in the ring. Pearce does go back for a second to like try to give it a kiss, to like say goodbye. Cabana kicks dirt on it like it's dead. This is how it's going to be. It's dead. And they both leave together.
And the cool thing about this, like in that moment, you go back and listen to the promo because you don't hear Adam Pearce disrespect the NWA. You listen to it. Colt is very aggressive, and the story tells you why. I mean, he's pissed because here he did. He was promised by Dave Marquez. He was promised by Robert Trowbridge to be NWA World Champion. They took that away from him, right? The best guy to have the belt. Adam Pearce will tell you that himself. He told me that lots of times on the podcast. And they took it away from him. They pulled the rug right from under his feet. Then they get it right. They're doing this angle, this storyline that's literally this feud. I wrote it down here. Where'd I put it? Feud of the year in 2012. This was the third runner-up. It lost out to the Aces and Eights versus Aces and Eights versus
exactly. That's the point.
It lost out to CM Punk and John Cena and CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. Those were the feuds that topped it. So all three of those were multi-million-dollar, maybe billion-dollar wrestling promotions. The third runner-up was no promotion, guys. It wasn't one person.
And other feuds were stock feuds, man. They're stock feuds or canned feuds. They're just contrived. They're not real feuds.
The thing that this feud had that nothing that the NWA can do now is this was grassroots. This was do-it-yourself wrestling. There wasn't a big backer to the NWA, and I'm not saying that Billy's shelling out millions of dollars for this promotion, but I guarantee you that these guys weren't wrestling for a lot of money, that they weren't getting rich doing these shows, man. They were providing for themselves, but they weren't rock stars. They had to hustle to get to Australia. And it wasn't like it was just like, hey guys, come to Australia. No, Pearce had built relations in Australia in the years previous as world champion and really built that area. Again, Pearce did something that no other NWA champion after him, I think, could do. And that was, he was the guy that got these bookings. He was the hustler. He was the one booking himself. He didn't have, it wasn't Bill Barons getting him matches. It was Adam Pearce. It was that do-it-yourself mentality. So he never disrespects the NWA. Colt Cabana is kicking dirt on it. And you see,
and Pearce says in the documentary, like, well, you earned it. Like,
yeah,
I mean, he gets it.
And go ahead.
No. I don't even know what I think. Like, it's like on one hand, like, I love the 10 pounds of gold. I love the NWA, but it's like, God, can you imagine being in the shoes of Colt Cabana during this whole situation? You're like, Man,
Well,
screw these guys.
I struggle
Screw
with the
this whole
thing.
thing.
The dirt on the NWA title. I mean, and I get the human element, but at the same time, and I think this is a fantastic feud. But I think this is an instance where Adam Pearce like elevated, and gosh, I don't want to offend anybody. I've never been that much into Colt Cabana. I think this is Adam Pearce, man. Adam Pearce like made this, and this was a feud that was really organic, and he made someone who I think that was lesser than him really raised him up, and made him into something that's in the lore now of the National Wrestling Alliance.
I hope nothing I've said has diminished Adam Pearce in any way, because I am most certainly talking all kinds of praise about Adam Pearce. I think he's the freaking man after this.
And again, this at this moment, like, think about the last time we saw the NWA title drop to the ground like that, right? Shane Douglas did it. He's vilified by the NWA fans, and I don't think to this day, I don't think most NWA fans have forgiven him for that. But then you have Pearce, who by arguably is one of the standard bearers of the brand in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years. He does it, and he's kind of revered for it. That just kind of speaks to the ownership at the time. And, they were thrilled initially with that video, with those comments, because they didn't want anything to do with Cabana, that Pearce kept the integrity of the belt, that he made that promise. This was all the part of their plan, and it was working to, like, hey, now we can distance ourselves and move forward, until the fans said, F the NWA, I support these two guys. And that's where things churned. And then all of a sudden the NWA was like, that was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. And, obviously that all changed. That mentality changed.
Yeah.
Well, let's move into that, Rob, before you wrap that up. I mean, let me just throw out there. I mean, just for a post section on this, and there's even more posts that we could go into, but at this point, Adam Pearce is a 5-time NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, and he deserves all the respect in the world, in my opinion. 1,078 days as a World's Heavyweight Champion combined, 7th longest all time. He averaged during his tenure a match every 9.2 days during that period. Unheard of in the modern era. Right, just completely. And by modern era there, I mean like modern era, like back when he was champion.
And let me put another little exclamation point on that. I mean, and this was a guy who took the NWA World title to Germany, to the UK, to Canada, to Mexico. I mean, in many ways, he was setting the foundation for somebody like Nick Aldis. He really was, because and again, his title defenses weren't all in NWA promotions. He worked for everybody, and he brought relevance to the title. You brought him into your town to face Charlie Haas, or to face, there was always that rumored match they wanted to do, Dustin Runnels versus Adam Pearce, or they wanted to try to get Booker T to have a match with Adam Pearce. These things obviously never happened, but the talents, Pearce would go to that town, wrestle the best guy that they had, put on a great match, make you believe that he could lose that title, made you believe that the Stroke could be the next champion, that Damian Wayne could be the next champion, that SoCal Crazy might be the next champion. I mean, he did that, and he did it so well, and never really what's the word I'm looking for? Just really drove that NWA brand, never really disappointed. And so all this is said and done, and the 7 levels of hate concludes. The NWA is not just a new direction, it's a new ownership, it's a new everything. The history that was that 7 levels of hate, celebrated championship wrestling from Hollywood and everywhere else. But it was just like, oh, now what's next?
Well, and let me throw credit to Colt Boom Boom Cabana too. He's a 2-time NWA champion. He reigned for 152 days. I wanted to note here because I put it here. I mean, even that puts him in the top 30 longest reigns of all time combined, which is one thing, but also that Colt, you know, he is a wrestler I think will go down in history. I think despite what anybody thinks or knows, like Colt will be a part of wrestling history, and just in the simple fact that he is an independent wrestler and has been through and through for most of his career and carried himself and made a business for himself. He has recently settled in, some might say, like sold out to AEW or something like that. Like he's in there, but I mean, this is a dude on the other side of his career, and now he's like finally bought into a promotion and like he's there, and who knows where he'll go from here. But you almost have to give him props. I mean, like the guy has done a lot on his own. He's exactly the kind of self-starter, the self-promoter, the self-motivator that like you want out of an NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, the same kind of guy that the NWA looks for to this day. Colt Cabana did do it. I know we have all kinds of, you know, like he got into comedy wrestling and yada, yada, yada. But I'm saying, like, as a wrestler, as a man who chose this as his profession, he is successful. He has been more than successful. And he has proven that avenue outside of major corporations. Like he deserves some respect as well.
And I think that you don't get AEW without Colt Cabana. And I know that might sound like a stretch, but think about it. He was the first do-it-yourself wrestler. He was making it without a big wrestling promotion behind him, and that was inspiring the guys like Young Bucks. You know, that was inspiring Kevin Owens at the time, and that was inspiring guys like I mean, there's a whole slew of people who started doing the whole podcast.
Eddie Kingston is one I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and you know, the Young Bucks took those same principles that Colt was doing, and the merchandising. I mean, think about this, that relationship that Colt massaged with Pro Wrestling Tees. I mean, that was an invention because Cabana using that T-shirt store in Chicago, Illinois. I mean, it really...
Literally, the Young Bucks will tell you, like I've seen it in interviews, they said that they saw Colt Cabana at shows and they were like, that guy has such a line and that guy is making so much money like off of this merchandise. Like we can do that. We can do that same thing. And they modeled what Colt was doing. So Colt's the man. Like as far as that stuff goes.
And so where are we going now? Are we done with the 7 levels or?
No,
we got done.
It's
levels.
all over.
We got 2 more levels, J-Cal.
I understand this. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page because you know it's only 9:18 where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, good for you. And poor Will has to get. I mean, I have to get up in the morning too, but I'm fine. So there were 2 more matches in this series. Technically, these guys were not done with each other. They had an opportunity to continue on. And there was a steel cage match. And I honestly, I tried to follow up on this with Adam Pearce's Facebook page, but stuff was done today. Like it was canceled out. So I didn't get to see all of it. I saw the cage match the other day, but I didn't wrap up any information. I saw that Adam Pearce, like Colt escaped the cage and Adam Pearce like screwed him over and like pulled him back in and got out of the cage. And like, that was level 8, but it did eventually lead to level 9, which was Adam Pearce's actual last professional wrestling match, right?
Yeah, and the thing, I'm sorry, I keep jumping.
No, don't apologize.
You keep saying that, but I guess that's the old Catholic guilt in me. The thing about it is, you know, when this best of 7 series ended, like I said, We thought Adam Pearce was signed. We thought he was going elsewhere. And you see him show up in TNA Wrestling, during the Gut Check Challenge. And you're thinking, wow, that's where he was going all along. And then shortly after that, he's starting to do work with the WWE. And he's making appearances at the Performance Center, not as a coach, but as a part-time instruction. They bring him in to kind of help get the next generation of WWE talent ready. And it's not a full-time gig, but you see him keep popping up there. And now he's back on the indies, and he has this match, the 8th level, and then we get to the 9th level. Now in Hollywood, he had returned for a while. He'd been feuding with Mikey O'Shea. They've been trying to set this thing up where he was, again, trying to help build up the talent of Hollywood, and Mikey O'Shea is someone he took an interest in, and had this feud again that had elements of that Cabana feud where they're the fire and baseball bats and everything else. And eventually, Pearce said, like, hey, I want a shot at that Heritage Championship, the Hollywood Heritage Championship, a belt he held. And his way to get there was that he wanted a shot at the champion. And Dave Marquez said, only if you can beat Cabana. And Cabana says, if you lose, you have to retire. And so Adam Pearce says goodbye. He, his wife was in attendance. I brought the man a fifth of Gentleman Jack because we had to celebrate the legacy of Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. It was a pretty cool moment, and you could tell that it was meaningful and emotional. When the match was over, he said his goodbyes in the ring. That was all pretty genuine. I don't think that was for show. He literally did the old deed and took off his boots, left him in the ring, held court ringside for a bit, took pictures with the fans, and that was the last time he wrestled in a ring.
And it would be easy for us to just sit here and tell you that and he rode off into the sunset and nobody has ever seen or heard from Adam Pearce ever again. But that's not true. Adam Pearce currently works for the WWE. He's a agent for WWE. Somebody somewhere finally got a clue. They were like, this guy knows something. Let's get him in on our team. And he probably can't express half the knowledge that he has. And we all know it based off just this discussion tonight. But he's got a pretty good job. He's cushy. Adam Pearce is okay, everybody. Adam Pearce is getting paid. Adam Pearce just battled and won, I think.
Yeah.
Last I heard, against COVID-19.
He
got it.
He took or beat COVID-20. That's what I heard.
But he's still out there, man. He's still out there. He's on Facebook. He's accessible. Adam Pearce. All you need to do, if you're hearing this, if we can deliver anything out there into the universe, is you need to go find Adam Pearce on Twitter, on Facebook, on the Instagram. I need to say thank you.
Yeah,
like you did it.
You're damn right.
Follow him on the MySpaces, Napster, Live Journals, TikTok.
Here we go.
Thank you, Adam Pearce.
No, you need to tell Adam Pearce how much you appreciate him. I swear to God, just go to his YouTube page where he's delivered to you most of, at least all 7 of the 7 levels of hate. And he's giving you the documentary for free to watch right now. You can watch all of this stuff and you can appreciate him for the man he is. If you watch that documentary and you don't walk away thinking that Adam Pearce is the damn man, I don't know what to do for you. I don't know what to tell you. There is literally.
You may or may not cry during the last 20 minutes. I mean, Will was so
I'm not going to cry, but I'm going to sit here right now and tell you that, like above everything, if I swear to God, a dream match of mine now is Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce. Like, I would go anywhere to see that match. I just need that match to happen. Like, that's the match. And it's like, and it's not taking it away from Billy, Lagana, Aldis, anything they've done. These guys tried to do it before. It didn't pan out like they wanted it to, but this was the blueprint. All Japan Stan in the chat. I don't know if you're even still there, Stan, but All Japan Stan was in the chat talking about this. Was the blueprint? He said something similar to that. Yes, this was the blueprint. He said, can the NWA replicate the blueprint with Aldis? Yes, they're trying. They did. I think they did replicate the blueprint and maybe took it one step further. And maybe with everything else that's happened in the entire world, maybe it has to go again. I don't know. But what I do know is that Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana's feud was the start. And people need to know this. This is an important part of the National Wrestling Alliance. And Jay Cal's been preaching it for years before us. And we're here to solidify our vote behind Jay Cal in that decision that, yes, Adam Pearce is an important part of the NWA legacy. He is one of the greatest world's heavyweight champions of all time. He literally is. And Nick Aldis is an amazing champion, but this is all started with Adam Pearce, and it's just building on that legacy. He set the framework that everything else is being built on right now.
I've been very vocal recently, when it comes to previous NWA champions, and somebody like Mike Rapata will get crap on because of his short reign and everything, and someone like Kerry Von Erich gets praise because of the time he had the title. But you have to understand that if it wasn't for those Mike Rapatas of the world, you don't get the Steve Carinos of the world. If it wasn't for, Shane Douglas dropping that belt, you don't get Dan Severn holding that title. So all these things happen for a reason. Believe it or not, it projected the NWA further and further. After they were the top of the world, they did take a back seat, but it kept building and building and building. And as David Marquez and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood was helping to build Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana, that feud built the NWA. What David Marquez did in Hollywood helped make the NWA important. That Bruce Tharp wanted it, and that carried on. That legacy from Pearce carried on to get Rob Conway in Japan, to get Tim Storm wrestling throughout the Southwest, and Jack Stane. And it showed Billy Corgan and David Lagana that the NWA had value, that they could do something with this brand. But if you subtract that reign from Pearce, if you subtract the 7 levels of hate, do we have that? Do we have this NWA that we have today? And I don't know what the answer is. I can't tell you, but I definitely believe that when you look back at the career of Scrap Iron Adam Pearce, he pushed the NWA forward. His legacy is that of moving the NWA forward. And even though he was quick to leave after that 7 levels of hate, if it weren't for Adam Pearce, I don't know that we would have an NWA that we have today.
That's right.
So, guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this part of it up. We are so far beyond what we even intended to talk about right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is the end of the podcast portion of this thing. If you guys are in the chat room right now, I see you. You're still there. There are people still in the chat room. God help them all. I don't know why they've just been hanging out with us nerds talking about wrestling for this long, but they're there. And you, if you're hearing my voice right now, you've been listening to the podcast version of this, and you're still here too. And I just want to say, if you want to hang out and talk about this stuff live with us, you can do it every Sunday night, every Tuesday night at youtube.com/the NWA pod. You can do it. You just hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon. You get notifications every time that we go live, and we'll be happy to talk with you. We are happy to converse with the live chat. In fact, we're going to go and strictly just hang out now and talk with the live chat. But I got to give props to a guy like Will, who's been hanging out here, and Rob Stinson and Jay Cal and myself, who all have to do whatever we have to do the next day. So anytime we need to bow out, we can do it. So I want to cut off the podcast portion of this thing right now. Will, tell people where they can find you if they want to talk more about this later when you've, you're like on a lunch break or something.
well rested.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, it's Will with 1L on social media, and yeah, pretty much that's where I live online. So let me know what you think. Interact with me a little bit. I am going to get the daily shows back cranking up. I know I've been promising that for a couple of weeks, but it's just been a slow news time. But I will say, especially since he's on the show, Jay Cal and I have the Friday Hot Tag live on Instagram every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So check that out. We're going to have another fun chat this week. So come join us live, or if you can't catch it live, we will.
If they ever stop a regular podcast, I'll be very mad.
So, just kidding. But yeah, if you miss it,
don't even fucking dream about it, Jay Cal. I'm just telling you. No.
I might have told him. Him.
There's no secrets in the bearded squad, quad squad. If I tell you one thing, I expect you all to repeat it. I don't care.
Don't you even dream about it. That's all I'm saying.
But as I was saying, yeah. So Friday Hot Tag, check out mine and J Cal's podcast, or yeah.
And
Will's mad at me, so everybody's clear. Will's like, "Oh, fuck you."
And
we're all like, "Fuck Rob," but go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm happy to announce here, and this might be a surprise, y'all. Jay Cal and I are doing a show on Saturdays now called the Saturday Snap. And it's just Jay Cal and I. We just like
I'm going to surprise all of you and say I don't care.
We're doing it on that on the MySpace, just so you guys know.
It makes sense. I wish you would. MySpace still exists, and if Jay Cal and Rob announced the show on MySpace, I would 100%. I would support it.
If you haven't seen Hot Tag, it's good, and it's very easily digestible. It's 20 minutes, man. It's not. You're not going to have to dig in for 3 or 4 hours like you are on Tuesdays and Sundays. It's fantastic. It's good stuff. You can find me on Twitter at rstinson4, on Instagram at Robert D Stinson4, or excuse me, RD Stinson4. Yeah, and then I'm on Facebook at Robert D Stinson. But mostly, just find me on this channel. I'm here every Sunday night, every Tuesday night, and on Fridays we drop Piper's Notes. All of you guys have been guests on Piper's Notes, and Friday, Will's coming, but Friday we will have Eddie Kingston talking about Tupac and Broadway and Nick Aldis, and that will be coming out on Friday, and I'll be dropping that. So look forward to that. But yeah, we're just, man, bearded quad squad, man. Hashtag NWA fam.
Jake Cal, where are you at?
Man, well, you can find my hot wrestling takes at the Alliance blog, and that's not just on Twitter, but that's also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Hell, I even got a Tumblr. So you can also find my channel on youtube.com/the Alliance blog, and even occasionally I'll Twitch, but I've got not a great computer, so we don't do a whole lot of twitching in this house. And every Tuesday at 5 o'clock and 2 o'clock Pacific, we talk NWA with the pre-party, and you're all welcome to come join us as we get you all marinated and ready for the grill with these fine gentlemen that you're been watching tonight.
Jake, how can they find you on Tumblr? Because I'm looking for you, and all I can find is like hotter than oven, and
you got to be careful on that Tumblr. Safe search, buddy. It's at the Alliance blog. You should be able to just type that in and find it. But
did you say the Ass Lions blog?
No. That's something else, my friend. That's something else.
Ass Lions. Hey, listen, I am at This Is Gary Horn. It's Horn with an E. The E is silent until midnight. That's what my dad always said. That was his joke. Hey, listen, I talk a lot of shit, and I have been making jokes here, but I am not kidding. Like, I am nothing without the three men you see on this show with me right now. Will Martin is one of the best dudes I know. Rob Stinson is one of the smartest dudes I know. J. Cal is one of the most knowledgeable dudes about wrestling I know, period. And it is the absolute truth. I am just lucky to have started a thing and like got going enough that I met these guys and like got involved with these guys. This is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life, besides marrying my wife, because she'll probably listen to this later. And I'm telling right now, besides her, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done. I believe in this more than anything else besides that. And this is cool stuff, man. And any one of these guys, the Friday hot tag, you got to check that out on Instagram. Jay Cal and Will are like two of the best dudes you can hear talking about like just standard opinions on what they think about something going on in wrestling. Like, you want to talk to good dudes about wrestling shit, that's where you want to be. And shut your mouth, WWE front row. I see it. Gary is in I love you man mode. No, GFY at WWE front row. I'm just saying, like, legitimately, that's what I believe. And if Gary, you sons of bitches. If alcohol brings out the truth, well, this is the truth, bros. Sorry, just telling you. Rob Stinson is one of the smartest dudes I know, and I'm happy to talk to him every single time I get a chance to talk to him. And we invited J. Cal on because we knew J. Cal would add just like unparalleled amounts of knowledge for this specific
Gary,
discussion.
And a lot of people, can I say this about J. Cal? A lot of people think like Hornbaker is the NWA resource, and he is. He is a great NWA resource, but J. Cal is the most knowledgeable man alive. Yes, you are. Don't be humble. Accept it. You are the most knowledgeable man alive. You and like David Marquez about the National Wrestling Alliance, and we are proud to call him a family member, part of the Bearded Quad Squad. That only empowers us, man.